Yeah. Let's see. Keep it like that. All right. So it looks like we live. All right. Thank you for tuning in, family. This is Divine Prospect of Kingdom Harbinger Ministries. And we're going to conclude with the Crows on a Strawman video lecture. This is going to be part 2. I'm not going to be doing any official recording while I'm doing the live stream because I saw that it caused some technical difficulties last time. So the official video is going to be something separate than what you see in these live streams. And I'm going to post that up so that, again, you get better clarity. You can see the pictures better. You can see the words better because it'll be in 1080p. You'll also see a little bit more polishing on it as well. And it'll be up sans all the other interruptions that you saw from part 1 and any that may arise from part 2. All right. So I'm going to do that nice little package for you guys, and I'm going to upload it so you guys can see the entire thing. All right. So right now, I'm just waiting a few minutes to let some more people get in the chat. What I'm going to do is that I went back and I checked on part 1, and I saw that there was some slides where I was talking and there was no audio. So I'm going to go back over those few slides again, just so that way you guys can get some commentary from me on it. And then I'm going to transition into the second part, which starts with Emahai Mazar and Israel Finkelstein and their contentions in regards to chronology. And then I'm going to deal with William Deaver and another scholar who critiques and criticizes Israel Finkelstein's chronology. So that way you guys can go and look into it further. And then from there, I'm going to finish the rest of the lecture. Now, remember, Minority Report Part 2 is coming up later on this year. And that is going to be much more extensive. What you're getting from Crows on the Strawman is just bits and pieces from Minority Report Part 1, Minority Report Part 2, and a few other things that's not in either. And again, this was a rebuttal video, a refutation video lecture to the debate that I have with Brother Jewry that they did not want y'all to see, right? So far, I've gotten a lot of feedback on part 1, all right? So again, I'm going to talk for a few more minutes until more people come into the room, and then we'll get started. So for those of you who are watching this, let me know if the audio and video is synchronized, right? Let me know if the audio and video is synchronized, and let me know if the audio and video is looking good, all right? Let me know in the chat, all right? I want to make sure this is on point before I get started, all right? Okay. All right, so just hit 1 if the audio and video was all good. Hit 1. All right. So you got almost 30 people in here. All right, family, make sure you share this link everywhere. Share it everywhere, all right? Flood up this room like last time. Last time we had almost over 100 and something people in the chat room last time. You know what I'm saying? And that was good. And the video itself has about 2,100 views already since Monday morning, which is not too bad. You know what I'm saying? So it shows me that there's a lot of interest in this lecture here. And I'm glad that people get to see what they did not want you to see. All right. So we're going to give it a few more minutes, and then I'm going to get started. All right. Y'all hitting 1. All right. Cool. All right. So I know everything's good to go. Everything's synchronized. The audio visual quality is on point. All right, family. So before I start, does anybody have any feedback from the part 1 that I did this past Sunday evening, Monday morning? Anybody get any feedback or input on that? Let me know. And then I'm gonna get into this in a few minutes, right? Give it a few more minutes for more people to jump in. And for those who keep the Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom. Let's see, we have a S. McGee in here, Global Purpose, Vinny D, Black Ave, Danielle Knox, Maher Yisrael, Spaz Out Kid, Lamont Shields, Gamaliel Padilla, Keontae Gates, Lorraine I.M., CC, Marquise Powell. Who else is in here? Terrence McWilliams. All right, it's giving y'all some shout outs. Okay, the numbers is getting a little bit better. All right, so anybody get any feedback from part one? Any input? Let me know before we get started. Come on, family, waiting on y'all. Let me know. Shalom, More, Yashab Ben Israel. All right, let me share this link. Let me share this link. Let's see. Yeah. All right. This thing here. Okay. Okay. All right, so if I finish this in good timing, then at the end, I'll do a Q&A. And please let the Q&A be on the subject matter. If I close this and open up another Google Hangout session, which I may do, I can invite some people to get on the panel, and we could just have a roundtable discussion. All right, so let me know if you guys are interested in that. Hopefully you'll still be up. You know, interesting enough, you know, for some reason, again, I have another slight headache and I'm a little tired, but we're going to get through this. And like I said, the official video, I'm going to be focused, consistent, verbal acuity, mental acuity is going to be on point, and it's going to be good quality for y'all. But at least you guys get to see all the slides. All right, I want to make sure you guys get that. All right, let me see. I heard that to see one's nakedness with the sleep of one's wife. Any thought on that? Yes. So, Gamaliel, there's some commentators that say that Ham had sexual relations with his mother or Noach's wife, which is a violation of Torah. And as a result, his offspring became cursed because he had ancestral relations with his mom. Now, I see why they say that, because you got to understand that text is kind of ambiguous, right? So there's like a lot of ways that you can interpret it, you know, but the way that I did it was purely through parsing the text and coming to that conclusion that more than likely it was voyeurism, which also is condemned by Torah as well. You know what I mean? So what is this class about? James T. Kali. He said, what is this class? This is not a class. This is a continuation of the Crows on a Strawman lecture. I did part one Monday morning, and this is part two. This is the conclusion of the actual PowerPoint itself. All right, so also when I after I'm done with it, I'm gonna put the time marker in here, so anybody that's new coming to watch the video can just click on it and it'll skip you right to the PowerPoint, because you know I like to give an intro before I get started. I like to wait for some people to jump in the room. Right now we have about 40 people in that's on watching right now. I'm gonna give it a few more minutes and then we're gonna get started. In the interim, Shalom, Levi Yisrael. Shout out to Global Purpose for the super chat donation. I truly appreciate that. Thank you. If anybody else wants to do the super chat, the option is up there for y'all. Shout out to Shepherds of Yisrael. Shalom, Mak. All right, it's getting bigger. Yeah, James, you can go back and you know, after this is over, you can go back and watch part one, and you'll see that this is a continuation of part one. Pretty much to sum it up for those who are not familiar what's going on. I had a debate about 2 weekends ago, I believe, I'm not mistaken, with an individual by the name of Brother Jewry of the Shrine of Ma'at. And this was on Sanetta's platform. You can catch the video on Sanetta Studios or Black News 102. And, you know, me and him had communication via text before the debate started. And what happened was he had made a video with Shaka, and he was addressing me in the video, and I didn't get a chance to respond to that. So I spoke to the brother and I said, hey, you know, I would like to give a rebuttal to a lot of the false claims that you made in regards to my position before we actually get into the debate. So I want some time at the debate to respond to it, because I don't have time to make a video, but I want to respond to it. And then I want to be given 10-15 minutes to give my premise, you know. And I also stress this aside meta. So when you watch the video, all I was able to do was give that rebuttal. I never got my 10-15 minutes to give my premise. And then we had a crossfire round, and then we had the solutions round. So I was responsible for putting the format together in regards to the actual debate. What I should have did was I should have added a rebuttal round after the round one, and that would have given me that time. It would have solidified that time for me to actually do that. And I wouldn't have been shortchanged, because if you listen to the videos, Taneda's like, oh, Devon, you want to get your 10-15 minutes? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, let's do it. I said, but it's up to him. And Jabari, you know, obviously, you know, did not allow that to happen, and it didn't go down that way, whether it's purposely or inadvertently. It just wasn't allowed to happen. So I said, you know what, on my channel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post the entire PowerPoint presentation with my commentary on it, and because he got a sample of it right before the debate and even after the debate, and you can see, for the people who saw part one, why it would not have been instrumental or beneficial on his part to allow that information to surface on that platform with all those viewers, right? So that's why I'm glad that a lot of people have been watching it, have been sharing it. And after part two is over, please do the same. And then when I get a chance, I'm gonna do the entire official video, full package, part one, part two, together without any of this extra additional stuff and no technical difficulties, because I will not be streaming it, and be able to give it to you guys in package format, right? So again, this is a precursor also to the Minority Report Part 2, which is coming up later on this year, which is going to have even more information. So what I'm giving you guys now is just a sample of all the data that I have to validate the existence of the ancient Israelites, that a lot of people with the Copenhagen School of Biblical Minimalism mindset has when they looked at the text and see that it has no historical value at all. And I'm saying that is wrong. The text is reflecting a social memory via oral tradition that was encapsulated in writing, right? And then what we're doing is we're trying to say, hey, is there any truth to this, right? Because we see it's literature, but is there any truth to this? So we go back and look at the archaeological record and the anthropological record and historical record, and we see that there is data to substantiate a lot of the claims that is made in the text itself, all right? And we're not dealing with the supernatural element or the supernatural aspect of it. This is strictly dealing with the anthropological aspect of it that can be presented to people who have an opposing worldview to ours. And we can also present this to academia as well. So like I said, I have my articles that's written in the process of being reviewed and peer reviewed and looked over before it becomes published. That process can take a while, you know what I'm saying? But once it's out there, a lot of what you're seeing here will be in these articles, and these articles will be published in universities, and then you can refer to it and also have it in your arsenal as well. So my objective is to equip my community to have a better dialogue scholastically with people that oppose our worldview, all right? So let me see, who else is there? Cohorts Music, Shalom. Jashub Ishakar, Shalom. Ha'asha Bafor, Shalom. Peace, peace. Marley Knox, peace. Who else is up in here? Let's see. If you want to shout out, hit one. I think I called everybody out. I want to make sure I acknowledge the people that's supporting this. Let me know. And after, like I said, after it's over, I'm going to close up, and then, well, actually, I'm going to close up the PowerPoint. And then if you have any questions, I'll do a quick Q&A. And then from there, I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to open up a Google Hangout session. I'm going to share the link, and anybody can jump on there, and we can have a dialogue, all right? So hopefully you guys will be up by then. This should take about an hour and a half, hoping. It should take an hour and a half to finish. And after that, we're going to Q&A, and then we're going to open it up for a live dialogue if it doesn't get too late, all right? All right, so with that being said, I'm about to get started. It's about 50 people in here now. Like I said, family, share this link everywhere. Share it everywhere. Get everybody in the building so they can get this great information, man. I'm telling you, it's good information. It's good information. All right, so we're about to get started, all right? SW, peace to SW, Yosef ben Yisrael, shalom, pieces of me, shalom. All right. Part 1 destroyed Jabari's position on your scholarship. Yes, thank you. D-Want 28, peace. The Kid XD, peace. Tina, peace. All right, let's go, y'all. Get up in the building. All right. Yeah, so that part one was good. And again, you know, it is the live stream version. The official version is going to be much more astute. But even for the live stream version, y'all seen the slides, man. And for that type of information to be on that platform would be damaging. And so much damage control will have to be done. It will look really crazy, all right? Because you can't refute what I'm saying because I'm using facts, artifacts, archaeology, the basics of anthropology, excavational reports, right? All my sources is from PhD scholars, all of them in the field. I don't use anything less when presenting this because, you know, they act like there's a lack of this type of data to support our worldview. And I'm trying to show you, no, it's not. That's why the Minority Report is 900 slides. That's not a game, man. Everything you see here is just, I would say, a raindrop. And the Minority Report is the ocean, right? So, all right, so let's get started. Okay, we got almost 60 people up in here. Mina Sykes, peace, peace. All right, so I'm about to go get started. Yeah, I agree, global purpose, it would. All right. Afro-Asiatic Kibu, shalom, Maki, shalom to you too. And let's get started, all right? All right, family, so I'm gonna go ahead and let me share my screen. I'm gonna pick up, I'm gonna do, let me get this real quick. I'm gonna keep this in the background. Let me pull this up. All right. Okay. All right. So let me know if y'all can see the screen. If y'all can see the screen, hit 2. Hit 2 if y'all can see the screen. Hit 2 if you can see the screen, family. And also hit 2 if you can hear me clearly. Hit 2 if everything's on point. Okay, that's 1, 2, 2, 2. All right, cool. So you can see it. All right. Okay, so let's get started. All right. Also, cool. All right. Also hit 1 if you see the PowerPoint expand to presentation mode. I don't want it to be in windowed mode where you can see the slides on the left. I want it to be in presentation mode where you can only see 1 slide. So if that's the case, hit 1. Hit 1 if you can see it in full screen. Hit 1 if you can see it in full screen. Right? I'm going to check up on this to make sure I can see y'all while I'm talking. All right, let's see. I can't get the chat from here. 1, okay, cool. All right, so y'all can see the full screen. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I'm picking up here because when I went back to look at part 1, I realized that there was no audio on this part. So that's why I'm just going to go over it again, all right? So this here talks about the Semites among the workmen at Deir el Medina. Deir el Medina is a new kingdom site. In part 1, I knew I was tired because I said it was a middle kingdom site, and it's not a middle kingdom site. And I put it to correction in the actual description, but it is a new kingdom site where the workmen who lived in that town or that village, they worked on the Valley of the Kings. And it was helping to build the mortuary tombs for the Semites or the kings of that time. So the reason why I'm showing this here is because I wanted to show him that at all these building projects for the Nasut or the king, there were Asiatics or Semites involved. All right. So this book here is called Enemies of Civilization, Attitudes Towards Foreigners in Ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China by Mu Chao Pu. Okay. You can go look up his credentials as well. And in the highlighted section, it says names of Hittite, Hurrian, Semitic, Libyan, and Nubian origins are identified at the workmen's village at Deir el Medina. Although these were mostly low-level craftsmen, because remember, Jewry says, oh, well, do you think that pyramids and all these other edifices was built by low-level craftsmen? Yes, yes. They conscripted regular peasants and regular unskilled low-level craftsmen workers to assist, all right? It says, although these were mostly low-level craftsmen, they were at least treated as the equals of their Egyptian colleagues. Look at this. Moreover, foreigners in the greater Theban area often occupied more important positions, such as the Asiatic chief of craftsmen, right, Tueti, and a scribe of the vizier, for another example, was a certain Zabu of Semitic origin. In fact, April, a vizier under Amenophes III, who had a tomb in Saqqara, was identified as a Nubian. Then we see other Hurrians. So again, Semites or Asiatics or Amu was always involved in building projects, all right? And some of them were low-level craftsmen. Why? Because a lot of them that were conscripted, some of them were pastoralists, some of them were farmers, some of them were peasants. They didn't care. We need the bodies to get these projects done because there's a certain amount of time that the king has to build his tomb before he passes on, all right? So let's move forward. Okay, Strawman argument number 3. And now the thing about the part 1 is that you heard some of the audio with no visual, and then when the visual came up, there was no audio. So I'm gonna briefly compact it together for you guys. Hold on, let me grab something real quick. All right, so let me grab something real quick. I want to be able to flow through this. All right. Okay, so Strawman argument number 3, Jewry's claim 600,000 men, 2.5 million, including women and children, left out of Egypt and wandered on the Sinai Peninsula, all right? My response, this is a fallacy based on a misinterpretation of Exodus 12:37. I did an entire lecture on the subject matter called Revisiting Exodus 12:37, how many Israelites actually exited out of Egypt. The Israelites wandered in northwest Arabia for 40 years and was seen as Shashu Bedouins. And for those who've seen part 1, you see where I addressed this. But you can go back and watch this video called Revisiting Exodus 12:37, how many Israelites actually exited out of Egypt, and you guys will see how I came to that conclusion, right? And the conclusion that I came to was it was nowhere near 600,000 men, nowhere near 2.5 million. And this was reconstructive work that I had to do from the ground up in order to get this new interpretation that has been overlooked for centuries, all right? And this was not easy work, you know, that I did. But it's apparent that Brother Jewry did not watch this lecture, because if he did, he wouldn't have brought that argument into the actual debate. But because he did not watch it, he brought the argument to the debate and tried to argue from that position, knowing, should have known that I don't even hold that position. That's neither here nor there. So for you guys looking here, this is how I rendered it, Exodus 12:37 or Shemot 12:37. And they journeyed offspring of Israel from Ramses to Succoth as 600 clan, or a clan of 600 foot soldiery of the warrior men, apart from the little ones, Ha Giborim, right? Gibarim. So from Reuben, it was a clan of 46, and they consisted of 500 men. From Simeon was a clan of 59, consisted of 300 men. Gad, a clan of 46, consisting of 650 men. Judah, a clan of 74, consisted of 600 men. Issachar, clan of 54, consisted of 400 men. Zebulun, clan of 57, consisted of 400 men. Ephraim, clan of 40, consisted of 500 men. Manasseh, clan of 32, consisted of 200 men. Benjamin, clan of 35, consisted of 400 men. Dan, clan of 62, consisted of 700 men. Asher, clan of 41, consisted of 500 men. And Naphtali, clan of 53, consisted of 400 men. Summary, 5,550 men over the age of 20 from the 12 tribes, right? And we get that from Numbers chapter 1, verses 20 to 43. 3,550 of those men registered for the infantry, Exodus 12:37, Numbers 146. A collective clan of all 12 tribe families, plus Levites and strangers, added up to 100,000 or less who exited out of Egypt. Details and methodology are in the video of how I came to this conclusion. And it wasn't 100,000, it was less than 100,000. But if you go back and watch the video, you guys will see how I came to that conclusion, all right? So apparently this guy did not watch that lecture, because if he did, he would have came with a straw man argument, all right? So let's move forward. So my argument number 4, Jabari's claim, another major difficulty with the historicity of Hebrew enslavement in Kemet actually deals with the timeline established by the story in the biblical books Exodus and Joshua. My response, the chronological timeline has been misconstrued and needs correction. The text does not give any date since it uses a relative dating system. If you guys don't know what relative dating is versus absolute dating, go back and do some research, okay? Therefore, synchronistic dating must be used to best ascertain narrative events with archaeological evidence, right, to support it. For me, it's a work in progress, but fortunately enough, I'm doing just that. So what I'm explaining here is that initially the timelines have been jacked up for a long time, and the timelines were designed to remove the actual narrative away from any archaeological evidence that would help to validate that. So what I've been doing was going back and reconstructing that timeline. And what I do in this slide here is I pulled this from Steve Rudd, and he actually formulated a pretty decent timeline, which I agree with for the most part, even though there's some differences in there. But I'm putting it on the screen so you guys can see that this is one of many corrective timelines to try and aggregate the data, right, with the patterns of evidence with the biblical narrative, right? So you can synchronize everything. You can pretty much see how things intertwine over time when you have a corrective dating system that reflects the data that we see in the archaeological record, all right? Strawman argument number 5, the biblical sources that make up the account of the sojourn in Egypt and Exodus 1:15 were not contemporaneous with the events that they sought to portray. And nobody's disagreeing with that. We don't have any autographs of the original biblical manuscripts, but that's fine. There's a lot of history that's been cataloged throughout the ages that were not contemporaneous to the events that they actually recorded. An example of that would be the works of Manetho. A lot of Manetho's works was contained in Josephus and other church fathers, and they had made references to this guy named Manetho and his work Aegyptica, right? And a lot of Egyptologists today have a common consensus that a lot of the information that Manetho had put out is crucial to understanding ancient Kemet. They don't disregard it because Manetho was from the 4th, 3rd century BCE, and he did not live in the times that was 1,000, 2,000 years prior to him being on the scene. They accept it because of the authenticity and how he presents his information and how it's contained and cited by his opponents, right? So his opponents are going to be honest about his information, okay? So again, you cannot say because a narrative that we have today, not saying that nobody authored things during the time when these events occurred. It's just that so much history happened throughout the times of the ancient Israelites that a lot of that data and those manuscripts have gotten lost, destroyed, etc. When you go to read the book of Maccabees, you'll see that the Greeks were burning the books and the manuscripts that the Israelites had. You know, and this was another reason that prompted them to have this Maccabean revolt and to establish this Hasmonean dynasty, which then became the Renaissance period in which they started to record this data again and restructure their social memory so that way they can lay down a narrative, a nationalistic narrative, all right? So let me see. Yeah, so this is why I stopped at before. You guys saw this part. The documentary hypothesis is one of many theories that explains the compositional nature of the text. I'm in the process of producing my article on the subject matter to trace rudimentary scholarship due to being nomadic semi-pastoralist. And when I say rudimentary scholarship, I mean authorship. I mean that a lot of this material was contemporaneous to the events that occurred, but it was not in a codified compilation with additional scribal elements in it to make it a cohesive story. It was just facts and things that were written down. You know, a lot of people say that Moses was given the Pentateuch or the Torah. I'm saying that Moses was given some information, but his main concern was jotting down the legal codes, prayers, and songs, prayers / blessings, songs, and legal code. That was what was instrumental in regards to Moshe. That was what he was instructed to give to the priests and give to the people. The narrative that we see there, a lot of it is anachronistic because it was redacted, compiled, and added to by scribes later on after his death. But he was the initial point of authorship, okay? And we get this from looking at the traditions of the culture itself, okay? So it says here, after the wilderness wandering and successive compilations and redaction that have occurred since then up to Grecian rule, This produced the Septuagint tradition. During the Hasmonean dynasty, a new scribal tradition took place, which led up to the current Masoretic text manuscripts used today. From proto-Masoretic text type finds, that some of them we find by the Qumran caves. Also to be taken into account of additional traditions is the Samaritan Pentateuch, Nash Papyrus, and Silver Scrolls. All right. So, family, I want you to hit 1 if you guys can still hear me, and if you can still see the screen clearly. Let me go check to make sure that everything is working appropriately. All right. Let's go and see. And then I'm going to get my spot. All right, so I'm going to scroll to the next one, which is this part here. Oh, and this Mummy DNA article is not making any reference per se to the Nasut BT or the kings, but some of the people that lived in ancient Kemet, showing their close affinity to the individuals from the Levant and not from Central Africa. So I want to make sure I update that as well to make sure that nothing sounds misleading, but you can guys go back and read the article and read other critiques on the article so you can get your information. But the data that I shared on atherosclerosis still stands, all right? So let's deal with this part right here. Whoops. Hold on. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. I'm gonna help and get through this. All right. Okay, leave this here for 1 second. Let me just verify that y'all can see everything and everything's kosher. All right, let's see. All right, let's see. All right, so hit 1 if you can hear me clearly and if you can see the full blown out slide. All right, hit 1. So far I see people hitting 1. Okay. All right. All right, so this section is Ethnogenesis, Chronology, and the Minimalist Agenda. All right, so I'm gonna go over just a few of these slides because some of it you didn't get any commentary from me. It wasn't displaying any audio when I was going through the slides. Okay, so we're gonna deal with that. All right, and let me just place this here so that way I can follow y'all while this is going down. All right. Okay. So in slide mode, you're not in presentation mode. Yeah, I'm not right now, but I'm about to get into there in 1 second. All right, here we go. All right, so let's go. All right, the various ethnogenesis models of the ancient Israelite people. Pay attention to this, family, all right? Shaka's claim the only model that exists regarding the ethnogenesis of the ancient Israelites is the Canaanite peasant revolt model via Neil Silberman and Israel Finkelstein in The Bible on Earth. This is simply untrue and results in argumentum ad populum fallacy and argumentum ad ignorantium fallacy. There are several others backed by PH scholars. My stance is that it was a transition from the conquest model to the peaceful infiltration model to the so-called peasant revolt model after the fall of the Bronze Age. And this is what Shaka said in quotes: if you are a Hebrew, everything you deal with is wrong. And there's a small typo there. That's from Shaka Amos, and that's from the Shaka Amos and Brother Divine When Two Worlds Collide video that you guys can type into YouTube and check out yourself at the 47 minute and 23 second marker. Okay. Now, what I was going over in the part 1 that the audio didn't come through, I was reading what you see there highlighted. Okay. This is an article called Migrations, Ethnogenesis, and Settlement Dynamics, Israelites in the Iron Age, Canaan, and Shuwa Arabs in the Chad Basin by Thomas E. Levy and Augustine F.C. Hall. Okay. And I'm going to read here the preface or the introduction, before the introduction, or the abstract of it. It says this article discusses issues connected with the emergence and maintenance of cultural identities in multi-ethnic contexts. Migrations have been shunned during the past few decades as an explanatory tool in the emergence of new cultural identities or entities. It is argued in this article that migrations are effective forces of cultural change, but they have to be well documented and carefully investigated. The formation of ethnic identity is a complex but dynamic process that does not take place in a vacuum. It sometimes involves foundational events such as key migrations encapsulated in the social memory, the trek across the Sinai Desert for the Israelites, or the move westward along the Wadi el-Malik for the Shuwa Arabs to the Lake Chad Basin in West Africa. However, it is more often structured according opposite cultural archetypes. The case studies marshaled in this discussion, one archaeological from the late Bronze Age, one emergence of Israelites in the Highland Canaan in 1300 to 1100 BCE, and the other ethno-archaeological concerning the Shuar Arab settlements of northern Cameroon. Both offer distinct histories with striking parallelisms. So I'm going to read for you the ethnogenesis that it says there, highlighted to the lower right. And then from there, I'm going to read the conquest model and the peaceful infiltration model, because those two models, there was no audio for it when I was reading it, right? And, you know, some people, they do other activities, so they can't really look at the slides. So sometimes they appreciate the audio, so they can just play the video while they're doing other activities. So that's why I want to read some of it as well, even though some of y'all can actually see the slide for yourself and read it for yourself, all right? Now, the formation of a cultural group, be it a family, clan, tribe, ethnic group, nation, or state in the past as well as in the present, fundamentally results from a dynamic but selective process of aggregation, identification, and differentiation. Like Palestine, the Lake Chad Basin has been a meeting group of different ethnic groups for over 4,000 years. In antiquity and today, these Chad Basin groups practice a wide range of economic pursuits, including full-time agricultural, fishing, and agro-pastoralism, and various combinations of these. And the historical records of the ancient Near East, variations in socio-economic pursuits have often been associated with different ethnic backgrounds. There are a number of anthropological definitions of ethnic groups. Different building blocks make up ethnicity. These include a biological component conceived of as blood, genes, and flesh, a similar language shared by a group of people, and similar general economic orientation, history, and worldview. The making of an ethnic group is therefore a dynamic process. It is not only a sociological category, but also a social construct. It involves psychological, economic, social, political, and historical factors, and as such is better considered as a variable which in any socio-cultural milieu is interdependent with many others. As a socio-historical feature, ethnogenesis is a complex process involving many spheres of interaction. These spheres of interaction may concern different economic pursuits, the balance of power between neighboring communities, settlement location strategies, territoriality, and complementary or diverging patterns of social organization. Theoretically, each of the main variables mentioned above follows its own dynamic, which may positively boost or negatively inhabit the others. And you can see there's an article there that deals with the Israelites in Canaan. You can pause it and read it for yourselves. But let's deal with the part of the conquest model I'm going to read. And it says, W.F. Albright and many of his students established the conquest model as early as the 1930s. The model is almost literal interpretation of the events mentioned in the first chapters of the book of Joshua. The extensive network of Canaanite city-states is viewed as having been destroyed in a series of violent battles when the Israelites took hold of the land. According to this model, the Israelites were living a nomadic existence in the neighboring desert areas and, after victory, settled down in Canaan. In addition to accepting the book of Joshua at face value, the conquest model posited archaeological support based on supposed destruction levels found at late Bronze Age sites mentioned in the biblical narrative, such as Bethel, Hazor, Jericho, Lachish, and Tel Beit Merzim. These LB destructions were attributed to the invading Israelite tribes. Then he says there are a number of serious archaeological difficulties with the conquest model. These problems revolve around the supposed destruction associated with major Canaanite cities mentioned in the book of Joshua during the late Bronze Age 2 period. At Jericho, for example, there are no consensus about the size of the LB2 settlement or the date of its destruction. At AI, there's a complete gap in settlement between the early Bronze and Iron 1 period. Callaway has shown that there is no LB occupation at the site or in satellite sites around the center. At Gibeon, where LB's material has been found in the cemetery, no LB occupation remains have been found on the mound itself. At Tel Yarmouth and the Shephelah, excavations have focused on the lower EB city, and only two difficult to date shards have been found on the upper Iron Age mound. Now, in the minority part 2, I'm going to go into detail on some of these sites, such as Hazor, Jericho, and AI. And I'm going to show you the evidence that tends to be overlooked that actually substantiates a conquest, okay, or even the burning down of the city. And the actual grain silos that are still there, which means that people were in a rush to leave or the city was destroyed before the grain was consumed. And we're going to deal with that in minority report part 1, but the rest you can read for yourself, right? And remember, I'm giving you the pros and cons of these models. So I'm not sitting here being biased when I present this information to you. This is one of many articles that actually touch on the subject matter. And when I do the minority report part 2, we're going to go into more details on that, right? So let's jump to the peaceful infiltration model. In contrast to the conquest theory, Alt suggested that the ancient Israelites, rather than conquering Canaan militarily, peacefully entered the hill country. Only later, under the United Monarchy, did Israelites come into conflict with the Canaanites and the more fertile lowlands when there was military clashes with the local population. Alt and others use the Book of Judges to support their theory. The peaceful infiltration model seems logical until one tries to identify the supposed pastoral nomads in the archaeological record. According to Deaver, the infiltration model of Alt may be based on a romanticized 19th century view of the Bedouin combined with ignorance about the operations of pastoral nomadic systems. In fact, Deaver believes that many of the theories on the emergence of Israel as derived from pastoral nomadic origins are questionable. As is shown below, we argue against this view. I'm going to read some of it. For Finkelstein, Alt was the first scholar to recognize the value of geography, ecology, and sociology for examining the question of Israelite settlement. It was Alt's student M. Knopf who viewed the hill country of Canaan as the key to understanding the emergence of Israel. Knopf differentiated early and late compositions. The condensed description of the conquest in the first half of the book of Joshua belongs to the latter category, and the contradictory tradition scattered in Joshua 15 and Judges 1 to the former one. It was Joshua 15 and Judges 1 that Knopf tried to investigate in relation to archaeological data. Field surveys in the Galilee by Y. Aharoni in the 1950s led him to support the peaceful infiltration model. The recognition that Israelite settlement was a slow process is the key aspect of this model. It began with the annual pastoralist trek from the desert fringe on the Transjordan Plateau to the summer grazing in the highlands of Canaan. Ties were established with the settled Canaanite population. The new settlers did not interfere with Canaanites because they established their new settlements in the hill country where few Canaanite population centers were located. According to Alt, the biblical description of conquest really dated to the period of the monarchy, and they were simply embellished and attributed to the early Israelite settlement process when the Bible was finally compiled around the 7th century BCE. Then it says, well, it talks about the main criticism of the peaceful infiltration model has come from the Marxist-oriented supporters of the peasant revolt model, right? And I read some of the peasant revolt model, but I'll just read some of it as well, and then we're going to jump to the second part, all right? So the peasant revolt model says the third model was developed by G. Mendenhall. Look up that person and research him. He's the one that came with this theory. And Neil Silberman and Israel Finkelstein created a modified version of this, right? And this is what we find in the Bible on Earth. It says he suggested that the Israelites emerged not from outside Canaan, but from local urban sites. Accordingly, the exodus from Egypt, if it occurred, involved a very small population. Now listen to this. This peasant revolt model still agreed that there was an exodus from Egypt. They still agree with it. They're just saying it was a very small amount that came out that actually influenced the rest of the Canaanite population. Keep this in mind. This is very important, all right? Accordingly, the exodus from Egypt, if it occurred, involved a very small population. According to this model, the people who became known as Israelites were really lower-class Canaanite peasants who revolted against their urban ruling class in the late Bronze Age cities of Canaan. After their uprising in the lowland towns, they fled to the central highlands where they joined other groups, among them probably a few pastoralists, and coalesced into a people called Israel under the new deity Yahweh. The peasant revolt model was developed and expanded by N. Gottwald. He agrees that the Israelites emerged from within Canaanite society, but using a Marxist approach, believes that the reasons for fission were economic and not theological. Now remember, when Brother Jabari was talking about the withdrawal model, and then Shaka is also talking about the peasant revolt model, and he was talking about it was an economic thing as opposed to a theological thing. Now you see the actual framework and the blueprint for this doctrine, all right, of this teaching. All right, the peasant revolt model was developed and expanded by N. Gottwald. He agrees that Israelites emerged from within endogenous as opposed to exogenous, okay, Canaanite society, but using a Marxist approach. Why would you take a Marxist approach, which is a modern convention, and superimpose it onto the past? All right, well, anyway, believes that the reasons for fission were economic and not theological. This model's appeal resides on the fact that it is based on sociological, anthropological analogies inspired from research on other societies. Doesn't mean it was based on what actually happened with the Israelites. They're just looking at Marxist models from other societies, and they're superimposing them into the past. That's an assumption, and that's faulty, a faulty premise right there, off the jump, off the rip. All right. It says this is especially the case for scholars, Davies, 1993, who considered that there's no reliable history in the Bible until the exile to Babylon. Okay, which we know is not true because we have other recordation of this. Okay. Then it says there are a number of problems with the present revolt model. First, there's a striking lack of concern for the environmental characteristics of Canaan, where the Israelite settlement took place. In addition, both Mendenhall and Gottwald virtually ignore the archaeological record, specifically the material culture and regional settlement patterns. Both Mendenhall and Gottwald diminish the importance of the natural landscape of Palestine, a fact that limits their appreciation of the economic potential of the different environmental zones of the country. They also fail to appreciate the dynamics of pastoral systems in the Near East by dismissing any role for pastoral-based societies in the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age because of their assumption that Bedouins cannot have existed at the time. And then it goes on to the rest of it. So the symbiosis model, y'all also can read that. That is not a that's a fringe model. It's not really a big, major popular model. But what I've been able to do is look at the conquest model, the peaceful infiltration model, and the peasant revolt model, and syntax them, filter it, and be able to get the best parts of it, and look at the data that reflects a synthesis of those models, and be able to present what I showed you guys, which was my revised historical outline of what actually took place, right? And we're going to go into further depth with that in the minority part 2, all right? So this concludes this section here that you guys didn't hear. You guys seen the rest of it in part 1, so I'm gonna skip past that, all right? And let's get to, all right, let's get here. All right, now this is what we stopped at last time. Pay attention to this, family, right? First, I want y'all to hit 1. If y'all can see the screen, hit 1. If y'all can see the screen, hit 1. If y'all can see the screen, if y'all can still hear me, hit 1, hit 1. So I'm gonna wait till y'all hit 1 so I can proceed. Hit 1, family. All right, I got 1, got 1. I got 2, 1. All right. So y'all can hear me, y'all can see the full slide. All right. Now, this was something that I wanted to pose, or actually I did pose it at the debate, but I didn't get to expound upon it. And that was, are you familiar with Emahi Mazar and Israel Finkelstein's chronological approaches and contentions? I wanted to see how much of this he understood. Why? Because he quoted Emahi Mazar, right? It says, no Jews built the pyramids because Jews didn't exist at the period when the pyramids were built. If the Hebrews built anything, then it was the city of Ramses, as mentioned in Exodus. Emahi Mazar, professor at the Institute of Archaeology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Then another quote he pulled was Emahi Mazar, professor of the Institute of Archaeology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, proclaimed, no Jews built the pyramids because Jews didn't exist at the period when the pyramids were built. So what's interesting is that he mentioned Neil Silberman and Israel Finkelstein work, and then he throws Emahi Mazar in there because he has quotes where saying that Israelites only built these storage cities according to the biblical narrative. And I agree. I never came out and said, oh, they built these pyramids, because there's no data from the narrative that says that they did. But if we go back to the archaeological record, there were Semites that were low-level craftsmen, right? Because that was not their primary trade, that were assisting with building pyramids. And I gave you El Lahun, which is a Middle Kingdom site where there were Semites that lived there that assisted with the building projects and the pyramids that are there near the Bar Yosef Canal or the Fayum Basin leading towards Lake Meoris, all right? Meoris, right? So here we want to deal with this, right? We definitely want to deal with this. Is very important. We want to deal with this, all right? So let's see. What does the Bible on Earth say about itself? If you guys look, it says the Bible on Earth, archaeology's new vision of ancient Israel and the origin of its sacred text. As you can see, the copyright is 2001. That means the data precedes the copyright, which means it's old, it's outdated, it's over 16 years old, right? But look here, look on the right. The part that I highlighted, and this is in the preface, it says, readers must judge for themselves if our reconstruction fits the evidence. They're not saying this is the bottom line. They're saying readers must judge for themselves if our reconstruction fits the evidence. And I've looked at this book, which is a very good, well-written book with some good information, good data, but a lot of the premise is faulty. And it doesn't include a lot of the archaeological evidence that's there. It cherry picks a lot of stuff to come to its conclusion. So therefore, I've critiqued it, but apparently people who take this book and run with it, they have not read the preface. They didn't say this is the general consensus of academia, and this is the final definitive answer on what occurred. The preface even tells you, you have to judge for yourself if our reconstruction fits the evidence. That right there is a sword, is a cut, is a fatal blow to anybody that says this is the standard for ascertaining what occurred with the emergence of ethnogenesis of the ancient Israelites. Body bag right there. Let's move forward. I want to go through this with y'all, all right? This is called the debate over the chronology of Iron Age in the Southern Levant, its history, the current situation, and a suggested resolution by Amahai Mazar. Follow me when I read this. You can pause and read the slide for yourself, but I'm only going to read the highlighted parts, all right? So here it says in the abstract, the subject of the Oxford Conference, the chronology of the Iron Age of the Southern Levant in the 12th to 9th century BCE in light of current debates and carbon-14 dating is of great interest among a wide circle of scholars from various disciplines, since it has a variety of implications for related fields of research. The subject is important for the archaeology of Levant, Cyprus, and Greece. It has far-reaching implications for the utilization of archaeology and the study of the emergence of various ethnic and geopolitical units of the period, such as ancient Israel, the Philistines, the Phoenician city-states, the Aramean states, and the Transjordan states of Ammon, Moab, and Edom. The subject is essential for proper evaluation of correlations and contradictions between archaeology and the biblical text. The focus of this volume should be on the dating of the transition from Iron Age 1 to Iron Age 2 and the duration of the sub-period widely known today as Iron Age 2A. To estimate the latter, we need solid relative chronology and as precise as possible absolute dates for certain occupation strata, regional pottery assemblages, and architectural complexes. More than 30 excavated sites in Israel and Jordan are available for comparative study. They differ in the quantity of data recovered and published, the quality of the excavation, and the state of publication, but together they represent a huge puzzle, the pieces of which have to be correlated and integrated into a comprehensive picture. Accepted dates for the various strata and contexts are essential for interpretation, but alas, no such consensus exists today. Here I will attempt to diagnose the reasons for the disagreements and to examine whether current advances in scientific dating methods may help us to reach some agreement or at least minimize the gap between the various views. This is Amahai Mazar, and this is the work that he has done. Now, if you look on the right, there's a table for the divisions of the Iron Age in Israel. Let's read that. Iron Age 1A is from 1200 to 1150 BCE. Iron Age 1B is 1150 to 1000 BCE. Iron Age 1C is 1000 to 918 BCE. Iron Age 2A is 900 to 800 BCE. And Iron Age 2B is from 800 to 587 BCE. And that's from Wright in 1961. Aharoni and Amiram from 1958, they said Israelite 1 is 1200 to 1000 BCE. Israelite 2 is 1840 BCE. Israelite 3 is 840 to 587 BCE. If you go to Aharoni, EA, EHL, Herzog, Mazar, and Nia Ehel, they have Iron Age 1A at 1200 to 1150 BCE, Iron Age 2 1B, 1150 to 1000 BCE, etc., etc. And you can read it. But if you scroll down, you see Amahai Mazar, and he has his modified version of it, where Iron Age 1A to him is 1200 to 1140 to 1130 BCE. Iron Age 2B is 1150 to 1140, circa 980 BCE. Iron Age 2A is circa 980 to 840 to 830 BCE. Iron Age 2B, circa 840 to 830 to 732 to 701 BCE. Iron Age 3A, 732 to 701 BCE to 605 to 586 BCE, and Iron Age 3C from 605 to 586 to 520 BCE. So Amahai Mazar has actually reconstructed his own interpretation of Iron Age 1 and Iron Age 2 and Iron Age 3, actually. And this is interesting because ironically, you know, a claim was made that I don't study the corrective history in light of the various ages, right? Because in the Minority Report, I go from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. And when I did some of Minority Report Part 1, I actually went into the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and even the Stone Age, prehistory time, right? So I use this data. So anybody that says that I don't use it is not familiar with my work, right? So this is a lot to read here, but I'm not going to go over all of it. But what I want to do is I want to read something to show you guys something, okay? It says, the results of the archaeological work of the 1990s and renewed analysis of various sites led me to change my previous view and accept Aharoni and Amiram's scheme from 1958 with some modifications. Recognizing the long duration of the Iron Age 2A pottery period, I suggested that the boundary between Iron Age 1 and Iron Age 2 be placed somewhere in the first quarter of the 10th century BCE, and that the end of the Iron Age 2 period should be some 150 years later, after the end of the Amrite dynasty and instruction of Jezreel, okay? This scheme enables the definition of three major pottery periods in 450 years between circa 1150 and 700 BCE, Iron Age 1B, Iron Age 2A, Iron Age 2B, with each with regional variations, and each lasted around 150 years. Now, I'm going to jump to the next paragraph. In contrast to Finkelstein's view, I suggest that during the first half of the 10th century BCE, a major change took place in the material culture throughout the country. This change brought to an end the Canaanite second millennium culture, as is best demonstrated by stratum V1A at Megiddo and related strata in the northern valleys, such as Yokneam, Dor, and Tel Kizan. The new material structure is characterized by various aspects, from new modes of pottery production to settlement patterns, architecture, and religious art. These are all ethnic markers. We see a transition of this. It should, though, be acknowledged that a definition of the material culture of the United Monarchy is strewn with difficulties. Since archaeology supplies the only firsthand evidence for this period, apart from Shishak's inscription at Karnak, it is essential to define properly which archaeological remains can be dated to the time of this kingdom. The MCC, with its long duration of Iron Age 2A suggested above, makes this goal hard to achieve, since we cannot say categorically whether a certain Iron Age 2A archaeological context belong to either the 10th or 9th century BCE. In my view, both options are open in many cases, while Finkelstein's view does not leave such an option, and according to him, all Iron Age 2A context should be dated to the 9th century BCE alone. I claim that the archaeological picture is far from being crystal clear, and that the traditional paradigm of the archaeology of the United Kingdom remains a legitimate possibility, though not mandatory. Thus, I see no difficulty in retaining the Solomonic date of the monumental palaces 6000 and 1723 at Megiddo. They're dated to the 9th century BCE, and main point in Finkelstein's theory would leave for the entire 100 years between 980 and 880, 860 BCE a poor, ephemeral occupation level at Megiddo. This is not impossible, but not very feasible, especially when taking into consideration the tight stratigraphy and pottery developments at sites like Hazor, Tel Rehov, and the clear 10th century BCE date of 2 Iron Age 2A levels at Tel Rehov. And y'all can read the rest, right? I'm going to read the last paragraph. Herzog and Singer Avitz proposed to divide the Iron Age 2A in Judah into 2 subphases: early Iron Age 2A, late Iron Age 2A, with the border between them circa 900 BCE. In their view, the occupation strata of the earlier phase represent unfortified villages which cannot reflect the existence of a state in the 10th century BCE, while urbanism and monumental architecture started only with the second phase and reflect the emergence of Judah as an independent state from circa 900 BCE. Thus, in their view, according to the MCC, there is no place to a strong united monarchy in the 10th century BCE. This may be correct to some extent, though I am not convinced that we can be so precise in dating certain Iron Age 2A strata to either before or after the critical line of 900 BCE. What is he saying? He's saying that looking at the garment of data from several archaeological sites, he's saying that there's a strong case for the emergence of the nation state of Israel to the 10th century BCE. He's saying that Israel Finkelstein has ignored some of this data, and he's forcing it into the 9th to 8th century BCE, and he's overlooking certain artifacts and excavational things that were uncovered from several sites. And he's saying that even though there may be some difficulties at ascertaining a 10th century BC emergence of the nation state of the Solomonic dynasty, he's saying that it's not far from being feasible, and he goes in to present this information. And you would think somebody who is an unbiased, objective scholar would present the pros and cons of a particular worldview, especially if they're subscribed to an archaeologist who they say is the dominant individual, but yet they quote Amahai Mazar in their same book, The 7 Little White Lies, and he has contentions with Finkelstein in regards to chronology. And this is evident to anybody who studies this work. All right. Now let's go to the conclusions. Conclusions. The suggested MCC appears to be the most reasonable and acceptable chronology for the 10th to 9th century BC in the Southern Levant. It indicates a long duration of the same material culture throughout most of these centuries, and also results in an even and logical subdivision of the period from 1130 to 732 to 700 BCE in 3 more or less even time units, each with its own material cultural traits. This view appears to have become the dominant among many archaeologists currently working in Israel. The MCC fits the archaeological data from many sites and the radiometric dates from Tel Rehov. One problem with this chronology is the difficulty in separating the 10th century from the 9th century BCE. Current and future research is in well-stratified sites might enable more refined separation between early and late Iron Age 2 assemblages, as indeed was already suggested in several cases. All right. In historical terms, the MCC utilized here enables to retain most of the traditional archaeological picture relating to the 10th century BCE and united monarchy, though skepticism may arise even according to this system. Yet, even if we accept the traditional 10th century BCE dates of strata like Megiddo, VA, IVB, Hazor X, and so on, and buildings like steep stone structure. Now, when you see VA, IVA, X, these are all various layers in the strata where they find various artifacts. Okay, and this is when you study stratigraphy, you'll understand what these terms mean. So if you guys don't study stratigraphy or don't know what that science is, let me know, and I can email you a book that goes in depth on it that I actually debuted when I did the Minority Part 1. And you would think my opponent would have been prepared to have this type of discussion, but he wasn't. Okay, so it says, and so on, in buildings like the steep stone structure in Jerusalem, the emergent archaeological picture would not necessarily point to a united monarchy of any excessive size or magnitude. It rather identifies a shift in the material culture during the 10th century BCE. Revival of urban life is a slow process. Limited monumental architecture would indicate central administration, which is important. Evidence for revival of trade with Phoenicia and Cyprus, trade with Phoenicia, that's important, and limited, probably indirect connections with Greece. The system of settlements in the northern Negev and the Negev highlands may be related to copper production at Finan, which flourished during this time and perhaps was related to the emergence of Edom. All right, and we're gonna skip through the rest of this, and you guys can look at what's highlighted there and look at all his references. All right, let's move forward. Now, this is important right here. Israel Finkelstein revises his dating as the indefatigable minimalist slipping. Let's read this. The March 2011 newsletter published by Australian Archaeology Institute reported the following. Israel Finkelstein revives his dating. 2 afternoon sessions at the Society of Biblical Literature meeting were devoted to archaeology and text, and in particular to the dating problems associated with the transition from Iron Age 1 to Iron Age 2. In these sessions, Ayala Gilboa spoke on Tel Dor, Amahai Mazor at Tel Rahov, and Aren Meir at Tel Es Safi, Israel Finkelstein on Megiddo, and David Usishkin on Jezreel. During his presentation, Israel Finkelstein revised his dating and stated that he was now dating the transition from Iron Age 1 to 2A to about 950 BCE. Family, this is a fatal blow to anybody that's still using the Bible on earth, because most of those conclusions was based on his low chronology stance. You got to understand this, fam. This means 9th to 8th century is where he says we have the emergence of a nation state, of a divided kingdom, not a united monarchy. But if he's revising his chronological stance, that means it pulls him more in synchronistic alignment with what Amahai Mazar was stating from the previous article I just read to y'all. This is a death blow. This was momentous. Based on the experiences in the Philistine areas and sites such as Lachish, Ushixkin, and Finkelstein have been dating the start of the Iron Age 2 to 920 to 900 BCE, and they, along with many others, have used this dating to argue that David and Solomon did not exist. Archaeologists working elsewhere in the Southern Levant have found the comparatively short period of Iron Age 2 problematic because it was difficult to compress their Iron Age 2 levels into it. While they mounted archaeological arguments to support an earlier start to the Iron Age 2, they were normally accused of being biblically based. Why? Because the data and the chronology they started to present, right, and their conclusion of such was aligning with the biblical narrative. So they write you off automatically. You see the biasness? Now that Finkelstein is digging at Megiddo, where there's significant depth of Iron Age 2 material, he realized that the period was longer and that an earlier date for the start of Iron Age 2 is necessary. Family, he wasn't doing his digging prior to him making the Bible on earth. So this is new excavational work that he's doing that is actually causing him to revise his chronology. And you think they would tell you this? Okay. And this is what I said to Brother Jabari. I said, listen, since 2001, when that book was published, so much stuff has been done since then. And you would think he would consider this, or at least mention this, but no, he has a biased worldview, and that is his Bible, his go-to Bible when it comes to condemning the ethnogenesis of the ancient Israelites. All right. It says he realized at the period there are numerous books written by Finkelstein arguing that there was no united monarchy because Iron Age 2 began long after the time it was supposed to have existed. Unfortunately, these books will continue to have an influence for decades to come, although the core argument is no longer accepted. Are y'all reading this? The change does not mean that the united monarchy did exist. It simply removes one of the hypothesized impediments to it, which Israel Finkelstein presented, and people are still hold on to his coattails in regards to this Bible and Earth doctrine, which is over 16 years old. In fact, it's older than that. 1999, I think, is when the real publication came out, which would make it about 18 and 19 years old. All right. It was interesting that in the presentations, the only person to regularly refer to biblical texts was Finkelstein. How ironic. For him, disproving the Old Testament appears to be a hobby horse. Much of the scholarly world has been fixated on Finkelstein conveying his hypothesis as facts. It will be interesting to see if he now takes a less dogmatic stance, which I'm hoping he does if he's really going to truly be unbiased. Sadly, the only Israeli archaeologist in these sessions to present archaeology as a way of understanding ancient lines was Aren Meir and to some extent Emahai Mazar. The others were caught up with their historical imperatives. This report is illuminating. Dr. Finkelstein is well known for his skepticism towards the Bible, so this backtracking is rather surprising. Let us see if he remains consistent or if he recognizes that he dropped the ball for his fellow skeptics everywhere. In either case, his bias against the ancient text of the Bible should be recognized by anyone who wants to be remotely fair-minded and intellectually honest. This is a death blow to the Bible on earth. Anybody that still subscribes to the Bible on earth as being the latest standard in regards to the interpretation of the ethnogenesis, the ancient Israelites, and the emergence of the culture during the Iron Age 1 and 2 period is using outdated information, and they don't even realize that Israel Finkelstein is now doing new updated digs. And this was in 2011. This was what, 6 years ago, and he's been doing more work since then. And his digs at Megiddo is causing him to backtrack his chronological stance. And his entire book was based on low chronology. Okay, let's move forward, family. Let's move forward. All right, I'm gonna leave this here for y'all to read. A response to Finkelstein and Piaski's criticism and new perspective by Emahai Mazar. And you guys can read this on your own time. But what I'll do is that I'll read just the abstract and some of the introduction, and you guys can read the rest. But again, you'll see Emahai Mazar responding to a lot of the work that was put out by Israel Finkelstein. Israel Finkelstein even challenged Emahai Mazar's his publications. So now Emahai Mazar is responding back to Finkelstein. This contention has been going on back and forth between them, but you would think somebody who's unbiased, right, who's trying to give you an objective view on the ethnogenesis of the Israelites will present this information to you. No. And when they don't, they have an agenda. Abstract. The following short paper is a response to criticism by Israel Finkelstein and Piasecki, published in the present issue of Radiocarbon of our 2008 paper in Radiocarbon concerning the evaluation of carbon-14 dates from Iron Age levels in Israel, published by Boareto. We refer to criticism concerning exclusion and inclusion of data. We also evaluate new models suggested by Finkelstein and Piatsky, and in particular, their suggestion of regional stages marking the end of Iron Age in Israel. We also comment on several methodological issues. Now, keep this in mind. Israel Finkelstein and Piatsky wrote that initial article in 2010, which was before we see this previous session that they had, or around the same time that this session occurred, where he revised his chronology. All right. So introduction. One of the most important developments in historical archaeology of the Southern Levant during the last decade was the wide-scale introduction of radiometric dates to the discussion. Frustration with the textual, mainly biblical-based interpretation of archaeological data led archaeologists to explore new avenues, and radiocarbon dating appeared to be the most helpful tool for objective dating, in particular in relation to the Iron Age prior to 700 BCE. For those of you who subscribe to David Rowe is very critical of radiocarbon dating, right? He's not a fan of any kind of radiocarbon dating, all right? Just so you guys know. And I actually have a video where he did a panel discussion with 3 other PhD scholars in regards to this, right? And he expresses his view, and they critique his view in regards to him not including radiocarbon dating in his findings and his conclusions, okay? It says here, in the Radiocarbon Conference proceeding, published in 2001, series of dates from Dor, Tel Rehov, and Beth She'en were the first relatively large groups of dates related to Iron Age in Israel, measured thanks to collaboration in the 1990s between the Radiocarbon 14 Laboratory at the Weizmann Institute of Science at Rehoboth and the Israel Antiquities Authority. Now, keep Israel Antiquities Authority in mind when I give y'all the Minority Part 2, because you're going to see that they're working hand in hand with Tel Aviv University, where Israel Finkelstein is located at, and being that they work hand in hand with them, they are disenfranchising anybody outside of that union who are making excavational finds that support the biblical narrative. It's a conspiracy for real, family. And I have an article from Haaretz that go into detail about that, all right? So let me skip forward. It says, one of the main results of the first phase of the Iron Age dating project study achieved with the use of Bayesian models, which is a great way to ascertain or to reconstruct history. Models prepared for the Oxcal software was the transition from Iron Age 1 to Iron Age 2 be lowered from 1000 BCE, traditional dating, to 900 BCE in agreement with Finkel's low chronology. This result could be of utmost importance for historical interpretation, since it would mean that archaeological assemblages attributed traditionally to the 10th century date instead to the 9th century and have nothing to do with the United Monarchy. In our previous paper, we attempted to show that the Bayesian models using the same data with several different evaluation of outliers indicate a date for the transition from Iron Age 1 to 2 as follows: 962 to 942, 966 to 929, including wood samples using only short-lived material. Number 2, the transition between two periods was probably a long process that lasted several decades. Number 3, heavy destructions, which marked the end of several major Iron Age 1 sites in Israel, occurred during a time covering the last decades of the last century and first decades of the 10th century BCE, no later than 960. Thus, the end of Iron Age 1 and transition to Iron Age 2 must have started during those years. Outliers exist in all measurements and should be evaluated in a proper manner because a small number of aberrant results can change the whole picture when the calendar precision required is as great as it is here. Several points in our 2008 article were criticized by Finkelstein and Piasky, who also suggest a new way to understand the transition from Iron Age 1 to Iron Age 2 in Israel. And his new suggestion, some of the basic ideas of low chronology were dropped. We are grateful for the editor, Tim Jaw of Radiocarbon, for the opportunity to respond to their paper. Our response is divided in two parts, and I end here. Number 1, response to the critique of data inclusion or exclusion in our paper. And number 2, evaluation of Finkelstein and Piasecki's new suggestion concerning the transition from Iron Age 1 to Iron Age 2. We think there's insufficient evidence for their suggested stages in this transition. However, we think that their overall conclusion is similar to ours and that this might have important consequences for historical interpretation of the archaeology of the region. All right, let's move forward. Now, let's get into this article, Divided Kingdoms, United Critics. So now, this is a critique of Israel Finkelstein's book. Israel Finkelstein's book is called The Forgotten Kingdom, The Archaeology and History of Northern Israel, Society of Biblical Literature, Ancient Near East Monograph, right? Atlanta, Society of Biblical Literature. And here's the book right there. You can see the book right there, all right, where it says The Forgotten Kingdom, okay? Right here where it says Forgotten Kingdom. Now, William G. Deaver has critiqued, okay, Israel Finkelstein's work, and I'm going to jump here to his points. He says, what are the facts? All of Finkelstein's evidence of a cult place at Shiloh is circumstantial. He himself admits this. Number 2, he interprets the well-known Iron One Pillar Courthouse A at Shiloh that was originally excavated by a Danish expedition and later reinvestigated by himself as a public building only because it contains too many store jars. Yet his own Iron Age 1 excavated at Megiddo, published explicitly as an ordinary private house, contained more than 40 large store jars. And he presumed the absence of other private houses at Shiloh only because few other areas have been excavated, and where they have been excavated, other houses are known. As for reliance on the Hebrew Bible's cultural memory, the latest fad in biblical studies, Finkelstein has famously rejected this cultural memory as unreliable. And he has castigated other archaeologists, listen to that, has castigated other archaeologists for invoking it. Yet here and elsewhere, he does not hesitate to appeal to biblical tradition where it suits his purposes. Cherry picking, that's what Israel Finkelstein does and what he's known for. As for evidence of Shiloh's destruction at 1050 BCE at the hands of the Philistines, Finkelstein cites not archaeological evidence, but only Jeremiah. He quotes the Bible now, which he admits refers rather to Shiloh's destruction by the Assyrians in the late 8th century BCE, and possible even then since the site was deserted. He himself is driven to fall back on the Bible's cultural memory. In sum, Finkelstein's early cult center at Shiloh is a fantasy, a product of his imagination. Do you see how other people who are in the field with PhDs are critiquing his work? But do you see, this is what's hidden from you guys. Biblical minimalists do not want y'all to see these critiques of Israel Finkelstein's work. I've given you several critiques already from several different sources. Okay, let's move forward. Now, we have a review by Aaron Burke, all right, who's another person renowned in his field, right? And it says, Israel Finkelstein's Forgotten Kingdom invites us to reconsider Archaeology and History of the Northern Kingdom of Israel in an effort to integrate the most recent textual and archaeological approaches. It's an ambitious work that few would attempt or be capable of. Such an effort is commendable. This might be the first book-length treatment to try to give us an archaeological and biblical text critical synthesis of Israel's history. Now, I'm not going to read all of this because there's a lot of work here, but let's go to his conclusion. He says, I conclude by turning to Finkelstein's persistent minimizing of the role play in the Northern Kingdom's development by historical David United Monarchy, however short-lived it may be. Finkelstein must do this, however, to create a lacuna that can then be filled by the Northern Kingdom of Israel, despite the absence of evidence for any such process occurring in the Northern Highlands until the 9th century BCE. Since Finkelstein is unable to demonstrate an unequivocal basis for the indigenous origin of political power in the Northern Highlands, his central argument fails. Okay, family. All right. And y'all can pause this and read the whole article if you want, but I'm going to move forward. All right. Look at this. A major source for critiquing the Bible for the conscious community is influenced by the Copenhagen School of Biblical Minimalism. All right. And here's a book here written by Eric H. Klein, who I have met and have spoken to, okay, called Biblical Archaeology, a very short introduction. And chapter 6, from the 1990s and beyond, from nihilism to the present, he has a little quote there that says, not a quote, but a quote that I'm reading from his book. Says the early 1990s began with another attack on the discipline of biblical archaeology, not by William Deaver this time, but by a group of scholars known collectively as biblical minimalists. These scholars, who include Niels Peter Lemche, Thomas Thompson, Keith Whitelam, and Philip Davies, suggest that much of the Hebrew Bible and the history of ancient Israel is essentially a fabrication, even though we see the evidence supporting the biblical narrative by writers and scholars living in either the Persian period in the 5th century BCE or the Hellenistic period in the 3rd through the 1st centuries BCE. They are called minimalists because they believe that the amount of actual history and historical facts contained in the Bible is minimal. The minimalists are frequently referred to as the Copenhagen School because several of them teach at the University of Copenhagen, although others at the University of Sheffield in England. All right. Now, this is important, family, because I want you guys to go back and look up the Copenhagen School of Biblical Minimalism. Look to see who's funding them, where they're located at, and what these people believe, what are their subscriptions, etc. And you'll understand what this agenda is. And again, the program that's in the mind of some people in the conscious community is that they subscribe to this with not being aware of the provenance of where these ideas come to with their critical analysis of the biblical text or the biblical narrative. So like I said, I try to disprove the biblical narrative by looking at the archaeological data. When I see there's a host of data that support the biblical narrative, even though there are some differences, some challenges, and some things that are not ubiquitous or in acquiescence with each other, and that gives me an opportunity to present a new presentation or interpretation of the anthropological model that consists of the literary account and the historical account and the archaeological account, and try to find a way to harmonize it to see why things don't line or add up. This is what you do with objective scholarship, and this is what I've been doing for the longest. And people who are familiar with my work, they understand this. But obviously, these people who have this agenda or critique or kind of jihad against the Bible or war against the Bible is secularists who are being funded to disprove the biblical narrative. Because I'm not going to admit, you know, when you do textual criticism, you see some difficulties in the compositional nature of the text itself. But these things could be explained. And, you know, one of the methods of explaining it is the documentary hypothesis, which is one method. And there's other methods to explain this as well. You got to understand, the earliest text that we have of the Bible is the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, is as far as the provenance or the origin of the Dead Sea Scrolls, is a far cry from when the actual events actually took place. So some things based on oral tradition or social memory will not align as properly as it should, right? But then that's when people like me go back and do the research to look at the archaeological and historical record and try to harmonize it with the biblical narrative to see what are these differences, what are these synchronizations, and what are the things that actually harmonize and align together, and give the people back an objective viewpoint of the culture and the emergence, development, and progression of the culture during the various phases of time. All right. But you guys need to go back and research the Copenhagen School of Biblical Minimalism. And this will, again, will let you know the program that's in the mind of those who attack the biblical narrative as not being actual history. Okay. Now, a timeline of contemporary biblical and secular history together. I'm going to leave this link here for you guys to go and see. Type that in, look it up. this is a great link that actually shows you biblical history side by side with world history, because apparently I've been charged with an accusation that I only look at world history through the lens of the Bible, which is retarded. If anybody says that, then they don't know anything about my work. But I'm gonna click on this link so you guys can see. You guys can see, all right? And you can see some of this, right? So it goes all the way back to 8,350 BCE, the earliest known walled city at Jericho. Jericho is one of the oldest cities on the planet. And this is in the Levant region, family, all right? And then it goes on to copper smelting, to horse domestication, camel domestication in the Middle East, Khufu's pyramid, Stonehenge erected. This goes into all of this information for you guys, right? And it goes on to into the history, right? I'm gonna scroll through all of it. Y'all can always pause and look at it yourselves, right? It goes to all of this history for you guys. See all of this? Hyksos, Moses born, the Exodus account, which I subscribe to. Moses dies, Joshua conquers Canaan, similar to the timeline that I subscribe to. So I wanted to show this because the timeline that they give for the biblical narrative is similar to the timeline that I have in synchronizing it with world history. Oh, wait, I don't think you guys could see this. Hold on, my bad. Hold on, let me go back. I don't think you guys could see this. Good thing I caught it. Hold on. Here we go. All right. Let me do this so you guys can see. All right. So this is what I was saying. My bad. Go back to it so you guys can see. So now you can see 8,350 BC, earliest known walled city at Jericho, first manufacture of textiles in the Middle East using flax, copper smelting in Asia Minor, spread of cities in Mesopotamia, horse domestication, earliest hieroglyphics in Egypt, Great Pyramid in Giza completed, Sargon unifies Sumer and Akkad. It goes into all of this world history, right? So you guys can see. Phoenicians settled along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea in 12,500 BCE. Stonehenge erected in 2400 BCE. First ziggurats in Sumer, okay? And again, you guys can also see the Hyksos, 1730, Moses' birth, 1526, the Exodus, 1446, and Moses died. Joshua conquers Canaan in 1407. So like I was saying before, this is similar to my biblical timeline that I synchronized with world history. That's why I utilized it. All right, you guys can also, again, always pause it and look at it for yourselves, or you can go to the website yourselves and check it out. But this is a great timeline that synchronizes world history, biblical history, okay? So see that I'm not biased. I just want to make sure people understand that. All right, keep going. You can see all of this, Greek mythological hero Hercules, Sea Peoples, 1228. All right, 1200 BCE, Greeks destroy Troy, 1193 BC. Ramses III fights off the invasions by Sea Peoples. All right, which the Philistines or Peliset being one of them. Ramses III dies at the hands of an assassin. 1100 BC, the Phoenician alphabet evolves from cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyph-based Canaanite and Proto-Semitic alphabets. Samson leads Israel. Saul becomes king. All right, the kingdom is divided. 930 BCE, 970, Solomon made king. That's when he begins to build the temple. And again, we see the Iliad and the Odyssey was written 800 BCE. All right. Rome founded by Romulus and Remus, according to the legend. Isaiah becomes a prophet, 740 BCE. Greek alphabet was derived from the earlier Phoenician alphabet in order, and names of the letters are derived from Phoenician. All right. Nikos succeeds his father. We have Athenian leader Draco has existing laws put in writing and institutes draconian penalties for crimes. Some of y'all may have heard of that before. Assyrians marched into Egypt and overthrew the Ethiopian monarchy, or the Sudanese monarchy that was there. Athenians defeat Persian in the Battle of the Marathon, 490. Rome becomes a republic in 509 BCE. Look, we got the 300 Sparta army under King Leonidas defeated by Xerxes in Persia at the Battle of Thermopylae. And goes on and on and on. So my expertise stops at 586. Nebuchadnezzar installs Gedaliah as the governor of the new Judean province. Gedaliah's subjects murder him within a few months, afraid that the Babylonians would slaughter them in revenge. The remaining Jews of Jerusalem fled to Egypt, among them the prophet Jeremiah. And then we have the Greek mathematician. Nebuchadnezzar II destroys Babylon, destroys Jerusalem, temples destroyed, Babylonian captivity of Jews begin in 586, along with this other event that I just read. And then we have Cyrus the Great Persia conquers Babylon, 539. And then we have all these other things that are occurring here during the Persian period. So my research starts from the entrance into ancient Kemet, which would go back to Joseph being born, Joseph sold into slavery. It would be about 1892, right, from the Semitic entrance into ancient Kemet, right? And we have the Ben Hassan memorial showing us various Semitic tribes peacefully entering into Kemet, and a lot of them were pastoralists, and other ones were bringing dyes and stuff like that. And it stops at the 586 mark, which is right here. So pre-exilic ancient Israel is my specialty that I study and that I research and that I teach mostly from that worldview, which is succinctly different or distinctly different than what we get in the Second Temple Judaism view when the Israelites are returning back and establish a brand new system of reckoning of time, of their worldview of monotheism and all these other things as well. All right. So again, this is goes to show that I'm not biased in regards to history, okay, and that I align the biblical history with contemporary secular history as well. All right. And you guys can go back and you could check this out for yourselves. All right. All right. So let's get back to this presentation. All right. So let's bring it up. Wait, I gotta make sure y'all are watching. It's 12:30. Okay, I see the time. All right, let's go back. All right. Okay, let's move forward. Methodology. This is very important because I'm going to give you guys some insight on my methodology, right? I actually pulled it from an article called Organizing Your Social Sciences Research Paper 6, the methodology, and this is from the University of Southern California. So I use an academic methodological approach when it comes to my research and when it comes to ascertaining the data necessary to formulate my hypothesis, which leads to my thesis, which then brings me to my conclusion using the inductive analysis methodology. All right. So some of this stuff is very important for you guys to see. And for anybody that's interested in how I do my research, this is explaining it right here. All right. It says the purpose of this guide is to provide advice on how to develop and organize a research paper in the social sciences, which anthropology is. Definition. The methods section describes the rationale for the application of specific procedures or techniques used to identify, select, and analyze information applied to understanding the research problem, therefore allowing the reader to critically evaluate a study's overall validity and reliability. The methodology section of a research paper answers two main questions. How was the data collected or generated, and how was it analyzed, which you guys got a sample of by looking at the Minority Report and also looking at this presentation. The writing should be direct and precise and always written in the past tense. And again, when I wrote these articles that are being looked at right now, it uses this methodology. It says the importance of a good methodology section. You must explain how you obtain and analyze results for the following reasons. Readers need to know how the data was obtained because the method you choose affects the findings and by extension, how you likely interpreted them. Methodology is crucial for any branch of scholarship because an unreliable method produces unreliable results and as a consequence undermines the value of your interpretations of the findings. In most cases, they are a variety of different methods you can choose to investigate a research problem. The methodology section on your paper should clearly articulate the reasons why you choose a particular procedure or technique. The reader wants to know that the data was collected or generated in a way that is consistent with accepted best practices in the field of study. For example, if you're using a multiple choice questionnaire, readers need to know that it offered your respondents a reasonable range of answers to choose from. The method must be appropriate to fulfilling the overall aims of the study. For example, you need to ensure that you have a large enough sample size to be able to generalize and make recommendations based upon the findings. The methodology should discuss the problems that were anticipated and the steps you took to prevent them from occurring. For any problems that do arise, you must describe the ways in which they are minimized or why these problems do not impact in any meaningful way your interpretation of the findings. And in social and behavioral sciences, it is important to always provide sufficient information to allow other researchers to adopt or replicate your methodology. This is the scientific method, right, which is a self-correcting mechanism. This information is particularly important when a new method has been developed or an innovative use of an existing method is utilized, right? Structure and writing style, groups of research methods. There are two main groups of research methods in social sciences: the empirical and analytical group approaches the study of social sciences in a similar manner that researchers study the natural sciences. This type of research focuses on objective scholarship, or knowledge. Research question that can be answered yes or no, and operational definitions of variables to be measured. The empirical analytical group that employs deductive reasoning that uses existing theory as a foundation for formulating hypotheses that need to be tested. This approach is focused on explanation. I don't use that approach, by the way. The interpretative group of methods is focused on understanding phenomena in a comprehensive, holistic way. Interpretive methods focus on analytically disclosing the meaning-making practices of human subjects, the why, how, or by what means people do what they do, while showing how those practices arrange so that it can be used to generate observable outcomes. Interpretive methods allow you to recognize your connection to the phenomenon under study, but because the interpretive group focuses on more on a subjective knowledge, it requires careful interpretation of variables. 2, content. An effectively written methodology section should introduce the overall methodological approach for investigating your research problem. Is your study qualitative or quantitative, which I mentioned in the minority report, by the way, or a combination of both, a mixed method? Are you going to take a special approach, such as a action research, or a more neutral stance? Indicate how the approach fits the overall research design. Your method should have a clear connection with your research problem. In other words, make sure that your methods will actually address the problem. One of the most common deficiencies found in the research papers is that the proposed methodology is not suitable to achieving the stated objective of your paper. So the stated objective was, does the anthropological record reflect the biblical narrative, right? And that was my that was the objective of my research. And my methodology suits that, because I go through all of that data and my interpretation of that along the way. And now you're seeing the methods that I took to ascertain or extract that data. And I'm doing so unbiasedly, because I'm also showing you the pros and cons of several things that I'm promoting, or seven things that I'm showcasing, so you guys can go back and analyze it and become the judges for yourself. I'm not saying anything that I present is definitive and that's it. I'm saying this is my current stance based on my research methodology and the conclusions or thesis that I've come to using an inductive analytical approach. And this is very important, okay? It says, describe the specific methods of data collection you are going to use, such as surveys, interviews, questionnaires, observation, and archival research. If you are analyzing existing data, such as data set or archival documents, describe how it was originally created or gathered and by whom. And you guys see all of this in the bibliography from the articles that I've shared, and the authors of these articles and the provenance or origin when these articles were produced. I gave you guys all of the sources. You can go back and source it yourself and get all that additional information, okay? And to save time, I didn't add all of that, all those details, but you guys can go back and do it yourself, so you can double check what I presented to you guys, all right? Explain how you intend to analyze your results. Will you use statistical data? Will you use specific theoretical perspectives to help you analyze a text or explain observed behaviors? Describe how you plan to obtain an accurate assessment of relationships, patterns, trends, distributions, and possible contradictions found in the data. And I've done some of that in this lecture, but other lectures that I've done previously, I've done all of this, okay? Provide background and a rationale for methodologies that are unfamiliar for your readers, which I've done. Very often in social sciences, research problems and the methods for investigating them require more explanation rationale than widely accepted rules governing the natural and physical sciences, right? I'm jump down to section 3. Problems to avoid. Irrelevant detail. The methodology section of your paper should be thorough but to the point. Do not provide any background information that does not directly help the reader to understand why a particular method was chosen, how the data was gathered or obtained, or how it was analyzed. Unnecessary explanation of basic procedures. Remember that you are not writing a how-to guide about a particular method. You should make the assumption that readers possess a basic understanding of how to investigate the research problem on their own, and therefore you do not have to go into great detail about specific methodological procedures. The focus should be on how you apply the method, not on the mechanics of doing a method, which I exemplified in the course of this PowerPoint presentation. Now, again, for you guys, I assume that you have a basic understanding of the subject matter that me and Brother Jabari debated on. So coming into this lecture, I'm assuming that you guys can follow the information that I'm sharing. If not, you can go back and grab bits and pieces and do your own independent research and study on your own time, okay? No, an exception to this rule is if you select an unconventional approach to doing the method. If this is the case, be sure to explain why this approach was chosen and how it enhances the overall research process. Problem blindness. It is almost a given that you will encounter problems in collecting or generating your data. Do not ignore these problems or pretend they did not occur, which I don't. This is why I'm able to present my culture objectively and academically to people who are opponents to my worldview. Often documenting how you overcome an obstacle can form an interesting part of the methodology. It demonstrates to the reader that you can provide a cogent rationale for the decisions you made to minimize the impact of any problems that arose, which I do and have done on the fly. And an example of that is when we had a crossfire around me and Brother Jewry, and he kept going to the flood, Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth. And I kept using problem blindness because I see that, okay, let me give you a rationale for why the culture did this and why I subscribe to that based on the methodology that I use to ascertain this information behind the cultural worldview of the people. All right. All right. So some lectures that reflect my methodology: the Patriarchal Priesthood in the Bible Unveiled from 2015. You can go back on my YouTube channel, check that out. The Minority Report Part 1, 2015, and I have an asterisk there. We're going to see what that means as we proceed forward. The Jubilee of B1:14-18, Redeeming Pre-Exilic Israel's Chronological Identity from the Captivity of Babylon and Others. I did that in 2016. Revisiting Exodus 12 and 37, How Many Israelites Actually Exited Out of Egypt, 2016. That has an asterisk as well. Was deciphering the Medunetia necessary to formulate the ancient Hebrew Abjah, from 2016, with an asterisk as well. Capital Punishment, Human Sacrifice for the Atonement of Sin in the Bible, and the Minority Report Part 2, which is pending to be released in 2017, that also has an asterisk. But if anybody who wants to know the academic scholarly side of my research methodology, my inductive and analytical approach to data, my hypothesis, which is the algorithm, which I input data, I let it crunch the numbers and give me an output that leads me to my thesis, that then brings me to my conclusion. If you guys want to see any of my approach in regards to that, you guys can definitely go back and look at these lectures, with the exception of the last one there, the Minority Report Part 2, because I'm still working on that to present it later on this year. All right. Now, the reason why there's an asterisk is because these lectures with the asterisk pertain to the ethnogenesis and exodus of the ancient Israelites. So when people talk about the exodus of the ancient Israel and they want to know my worldview, you go back and look at these lectures with the asterisks, as well as this lecture, Crows on a Strawman, as well, which also ties together a lot of the other research done in those other lectures and outputs it to you in a more simplified outline of the data utilized to come to my conclusion. Okay. So let's deal with the heritage section, okay? And after the heritage section is the solution section, and we're done, right? And it's 12:44, all right? So this should be done fairly quickly, but follow me through this. This is important. So I'm gonna give you a preface to this before I dive into it. I've done some preliminary investigative research, and in doing so, looking at my matrilineal side, I was able to look and discover through various methods and various data that I've ascertained. And I'm in the future, I'm working on a documentary to validate this data. I'm working with several organizations to be able to verify this data. Excuse me, give me 1 second. One second, let me take a quick break. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna take a quick break, family. All right, all right. So I'm back. I had to take a quick break. Let me see what's going on. Oh, you're saying that the slides was not moving? I don't understand what's going on. Somebody says, no, we can't see. Oh. Okay. Somebody, I think you're saying that you couldn't see the slides, so I don't know what happened. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna go through these slides again so you can see. Don't know why you can't see it. All right, let's go through these slides. I think it stopped at here. So methodology, I don't think y'all could see that. Let me know if y'all could see it now. So here's the methodology right here. All right, this is what I was reading, because I know you guys can at least hear me, but this is what I was reading in regards to organizing your social sciences research paper 6, the methodology, University of Southern California. All right, so I'm gonna leave this here so y'all can you can always pause it and go back and look over, but you'll have the audio on what I said in regards to it. But this is the slides right here. Slides right here. All right, slides right here. And that's what I was talking about my lectures that I do that exemplify my methodology. That's based on several articles that deal with research methodology. All right. Can you guys see it now? Hit 1 if you can see it now. If the slides are progressing, if you can see it now. Let me know if you guys can see it now, or if you saw it. Click 1 if you can see it. If you saw the slides that I just went through, click 1. Click 1, family, so we can get started. Where it says heritage, and then there is a box that add. No, you can't see it. What's going on? All right, can y'all see me? Let me know if y'all can see me. Let me look here and see what's going on. Matter of fact, let me just see what y'all seeing. Okay, so y'all saying y'all can see me. Yes, yes. Okay. Let me know if y'all can see the I don't know what's going on. All right. Let me go back. Let me know if y'all can see the screen. Let me go back here. Let's see. Hopefully you was able to hear everything that was saying, and I went back and showed the screens, but I don't know what's going on. Let me try this again. All right, let me see if I can see it. All right, you were not in the full screen presentation mode, just slides not moving. You haven't seen no slides. You didn't see no slides up to what point? Because I'm looking now and I see that y'all can see the slides. Can you see the slides now? And at what point weren't you able to see it? What was the last slide that you guys were unable to see? We missed 95. 95%. What? 95% to start. What? Hold on. What are y'all talking about? Oh, man. Just a slide with heritage on it. Man. Okay. What I'm gonna do, let me go back. Let me go back. Because I want y'all to see the slides. You can always pause it after this is done and go back and look over it. I don't know how that happened, man. I don't know how that happened. Let me do this. Okay. None of the slides were moving. Should be here. I don't know what's going on. The last slide that we saw was the first one you did with a website on it. Okay, can y'all see this slide right here? Are you familiar with Emahi Mazar and Israel Finkelstein's chronological approaches? Let me know if y'all can see that. Oh, what just happened? Man, this is crazy. I don't know what's up with this, man. All right, let me do this. I'm just gonna share my screen. Oh, hold on. All right, let's do this. Okay, let me know if y'all can see this. Let me know if you can see the slide now. I'll give it a second. Let me know if y'all can see the slide now. Can y'all see the slide? Hit 1 if you can see the slide. And then hit 2 if you see the slides progressing. Let me see. Y'all can see the slides progressing. Can you see the slides progressing? Okay, hit 1 if the slides are moving. I already clicked on the slide. This is okay. Hold on. Let me close this. Hold on. Let me close this. Let me reopen it. It's very strange. Damn, it messed the whole thing up. All right, let's go here. So I'm gonna go through this real quick. Okay, here. Okay. Let me see if y'all can see it. All right. Let me know if you see it going through the slides. Let me go through the slides. Okay, so now it's progressing. All right, so I'm gonna go through the slides one more time. That's crazy. I never really have these type of issues. But I'm gonna go through the slides. I'm gonna go through everything that I discussed so you guys can see the slides. So if you go back and watch this video, just listen to everything that I said. And then what you can do is you can go back, fast forward it to the slide part and just read through the slides if you want, okay? But I'm gonna go through the slides so you can see it. But remember, in the official version, you're not gonna have none of these issues. You're not even gonna have that much commentary. It's just gonna be just the information, the data that's there with some of me expounding on a little bit of it, but moving forward, okay? So to give this, the first 2 parts, I apologize for that. But let me go through some of these slides so you guys can see, all right? All right, so hit 1 if you can see the slides progressing. Hit 1 if you see the slides progressing. Hit 1 if you see the slides progressing. If you see the slides moving, hit 1. Hit 1 if you see the slides moving. No, you don't see it moving? All right, hold on, let me see. Man, this is crazy, man. Why is this not capturing it? All right, so maybe that's what it is. Okay, are the slides moving? Hit 1 more time. Somebody says they are moving. Okay. It's hard for me to tell on this. It's not showing me live. What's going on? Let's see. Okay, if you can see it now, hit 1. Hit 1 if you see the slides moving now. Hit 1. Hit 1, hit 1, hit 1. Yeah, there might be a delay for some weird reason. I don't know. Okay, so y'all can see the slides moving. Hit 1 if you see the slides moving. All right, I want to leave this here so you guys can read it. I can always go back and pause and see it. Somebody said nope. So the slides are not moving. Damn, I don't know what to tell y'all. I'm just gonna share my screen. Let me just do that. That'll probably be much better. Let me share my screen. All right. Now y'all should be able to see. I'm just gonna share my screen. Let's go back to this. Y'all seen from the previous one. So it should be moving now. Hit 1 if it's moving now. Hit 1 if it's moving now. Right? If it's moving now, hit 1. Hit 1 if it's moving now. Hit 1 if you can see it. All right. So again, family, I apologize for that technical difficulty, extended technical difficulty. So what I'm going to do is just go through the slides, because I know y'all can see it now. I'm just going to go through the slides, and y'all can always pause it and go back and read it. But when you go back and watch this video, listen to my audio, and then go back and look at the slides for yourselves, okay? So hopefully that works for now. But like I said, I'll be doing this over again in an official video, and we won't have any of these problems because I won't be streaming anything, all right? So anyway, I'm just gonna go through these slides. I'm going through them slowly so you can read it when you go back to it. This is crazy. I never had this problem before. For some reason, when I try to share the PowerPoint application, it's not behaving. This is why sometimes I hate doing live stream PowerPoint presentations. And let's fast forward all of this. I did all this in part 1. Pass all that. All right. Y'all seen that in part 1. All right, this is where I started, right? After I went back and showed y'all the other slides. This is what I was talking about, Emma Mazar and Joel Finkelstein and their contentions. This is the Bible on Earth portion, right? This is debate over the chronology article that I was reading. Y'all can always go back and pause it, but for the sake of time, I'm just gonna just go through it so y'all can see. Remember, y'all can always go back, listen to my audio, pause it, and look at the slides. Man, I'm so disappointed that happened. I truly apologize for that, family. But like I said, the official video is gonna deduce all of that because I'm not gonna be live streaming. All right. That's the link right there for the website. I'm gonna go show you guys the website because I don't know if y'all seen it or not, but I'm gonna go show you the website. All right, this is the website that I was telling y'all about. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I apologize, family. Thank you for working with me. This is why I appreciate all of y'all. But yeah, this is the site. It lines up the biblical narrative and secular history side by side. And like I said, it gives you, around this period of time right here is where I say the Exodus began and the conquest and all this other good stuff. Right? Look at this. Judges begin to rule. It says in 1375, which I say it's a little bit earlier than that. I would say between 1407 and 1375. During that period of time, we had the conquest and all this other stuff, and then the Judges period leads up to 1375 onward. All right. So I'm going through it slow. You guys can always go back and pause it and look at this timeline. So people can't say, oh, I'm biased and I only see the world through the biblical narrative. That's foolishness, man. People say stuff like that. They don't study my work. Right? Yeah, you're right. It is technology. It happens. But, I pride myself on quality and I'm a perfectionist. So when little mistakes like this happen, it really frustrates and aggravates me because, I only want to give quality to people who follow my work. Because, as an Israelite, we come under a lot of scrutiny for our research methodology, for our propositions, our premises, our theses, our conclusions. And we have to be, cross every T and dot every I, because we've been looking at with a high degree of scrutiny. So our methodology, our presentation, our quality has to be on point. So that's why when I do the official video, you guys can watch that. It'll be much better than this one. Be better quality and everything. All right. So here I'm showing you guys again, some of the things that I mentioned. Remember, I told you guys in regards to my specialty, I deal specifically with the Semites coming into Kemet, expanding in Kemet, being put to work in forced servitude in Kemet, exiting out, wandering for 40 years, migrating north to Jordan, crossing over the river, having successive battles, settling amongst the peoples. After the close of the Bronze Age, they started to retreat towards the central countryside. And from there, they started to emerge as a nation state of people as a response to the Philistine attacks towards the east and the other emerging nations surrounded them. They wanted to be more cohesive as a political entity, and therefore they initiated and established a monarchy that later was divided. All right. So you see here some more timelines. The Iliad thing that I mentioned here, Elijah begins his ministry, Eliyahu. All right, so you guys can see, right? There you go. So again, that's what I was saying to Jabari. Oh, he rather just tell you history from the biblical narrative. No, I'll tell you world history. The biblical narrative is just one element of world history. So, you know, people creating strawmans to me is a pet peeve because it goes to show that they did not study and prepare for a debate. They just did not. So my expertise stops at 586 BCE, even though everything after that I know. But my expertise, or most of my studies and my research is from 1892. Where is it at? 1892, where we see the entrance of Semitic clans into ancient Kemet, all the way to 586, when Nebuchadnezzar destroys Jerusalem, the temple, the walls, and everything like that. So the bulk of my research is using the literature, history, and archaeology to reconstruct the anthropological worldview of the ancient pre-exilic Israelites during that pocket of time that I just shared with you. Unfortunately, a lot of the lens in which the ancient Israelites were viewed is from Second Temple Judaism, which I believe a lot of compromise took place, a lot of acculturation took place, and it's not the pure form of the culture. So my research, my methodologies, my papers, my articles, my presentation is mostly built and steeped in pre-exilic ancient Israel. All right. I'll make sure you guys understand that. For those who may be new to my work or whatever, that's what I do. All right. So let's get past this. Oops. Let's get past this. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay. And y'all should be able to see this because I'm looking at my phone to see what y'all see. Let me make sure y'all can see this and I'll move forward. There you go. That's the link right there to Michael Wiley. That's the link. All right. You can always pause it, write it down when you come back to watch the video again. Okay. So let me move forward because it's getting late. Let me move forward. All right. So I went over methodology, but I'm going to go over the slides so you can see the slides again. All right. Hold on 1 second. All right. All right. Okay. So, all right. And these are the lectures that I said reflected my methodology. So anybody who was going to debate me should have watched these lectures if they wanted to really see my scholarship in regards to my worldview. But apparently, my opponent did not watch any of these videos, which is sad. Remember I said the ones with the asterisks at the bottom pertain to the ethnogenesis, development, and exodus of the ancient Israelites. Okay. And then the other ones, all of these things showcase my methodology that I read to you guys earlier that you've seen in the previous slides. All right. Now, the heritage part, let me get to this so I can finish this up. So the heritage part, like I said, based on preliminary investigative research that I've done, I was able to ascertain the probability that on my mother's side, being that her family is from the Caribbean islands, are of Ethiopic stock, going back to her grandfather. So doing research in the area, looking at the data from that area, articles from that area, the family name from that area, all of this points me to a connection with the Beta Israel or the Ethiopian Jews, okay, which is very similar to what I'm about to show you guys in the following slides. But the reason why I want to bring up my matrino lineage is because when dealing with this particular debate, the community I was dealing with puts a lot of emphasis on the mother or the woman, right? So in order for me to show them validation, according to me, inheriting this culture. Now for the record, my mother, my grandmother and them, they did not practice the Judaism or Beta Israel type ideology, if you want to say it, theology, whatever you want to case. But from that lineage, you know, their ancestors practiced this, and this is where they were from, and they went and settled in the Caribbean islands. All right. So it just means over time, a lot of this has been lost. And being that we have technology today and access to certain resources, we're able to go back and reconstruct our family histories. A lot of people do this now on Ancestry.com, 23andMe, DNA tests, looking at archival records, birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, etc. You're able to reconstruct the history. And through my research, and I've been keeping this kind of quiet because, these are my preliminary findings, but I wanted to validate it during the course of creating my documentary that's coming up. But I decided I wanted to share it as a sneak peek for what's to come. So that way people who attack me for adhering to my culture can see that it was something that I inherited and not just something I converted to. All right. They need to really understand this is very pivotal and very, very important. All right. So let's move forward. So now that I gave you guys that backdrop, let's move forward. All right. What's one of my many inspirations for my endeavor to reconstruct the truth about my culture? And again, I showed some of this in the debate. Right. Read the Black Jews, Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan. Right. And we can see there the author, son of Beta Israel, Yosef Alfredo Antonio Ben Yochanan. Right. And that photo was taken May 1983. Right. It says, those of us who understand the role of the European white Jews in the racist, illegitimate so-called government of the Republic of South Africa, along with the official support it enjoys from the racist posture of the present government of the Republic of Israel with regards to African Black people, Jews included, enslaved in this Hilterate regime, know too very well that we must find our own spiritual salvation other than in the state of Israel and from European and European American Jews therein, which I have done. A lot of my research is based on original approaches to old data. Why? Because I don't subscribe to the commentary, to sages commentary, to biblical commentary, to the general consensus in regards to interpretation. I formulate my own using a very strict inductive analytical research methodology to ascertain and reconstruct the history that has been lost, glossed over, or overlooked, because there are a lot of biases in modern day academia. So Dr. Ben was on the road to this. This is something that the work that he has done, but then he has left this work alone and proceeded something else. And if you look at a lot of my work, it picks up a lot where he left off, a lot of things that he suggested. He also says, we know that we must have a deity or deities of our own African Black Ethiopian making, which means we cannot use, as Hebrew Israelites, we cannot adhere to certain deities like Jesus Christ, certain deities like Mithra, certain deities like Vishnu, certain deities like Allah, even though Allah has to do with the Muslim culture or the description to Islam, and no knock to that. I'm just saying from my own approach, we have to reconstruct. This is why we use terms like Yahuwah, why we use terms like Yahusha, Ha-Natzori, or Yahusha Ben Yosef, right, who was the Moray prophet that through his martyrdom, attempts to regather the children of Israel, so that way prophecy can be fulfilled, right? So these names, these terms, this approach is all unique, because if we are too joined to the white supremacist worldview of what the standard of Judaism is, or who's a Jew, then we will disenfranchise ourselves in the process if we use the same sources that they use to validate their worldview. We have to reconstruct something brand new from out of our community. And this is what I've been doing, an attempt of doing, from the time that I stepped foot in this community until now. It says, which is no less so than European white Israeli deity or deities created for their own white racist version of the so-called Holy Torah, 5 books of Moses, Old Testament of the Christians, and other so-called God-inspired holy writings. All right. Then we go to the right section. It says, Volume 2 of this project gives the total perspective of a former Black Jew who found it intolerable and impossible to continue being a hypocrite by going to worship God, Yahweh, Adonai, Jehovah, with fellow co-religionists who would have been much better off had I not shown my Black skin and so-called Negroid characteristics within the walls of the synagogue. So he's saying that he's a former Black Jew, and the reason why he is because the people who he's attempting to validate his heritage and inheritance with are racist white Jews, and this has turned him away from progressing in that lane. He says, however, this rejection on my part does not bind any other African Jew to my position. Neither does it make any other person's participation good or bad, because he or she remains under the guise of Zionism and the belief in a promised land somewhere in Asia rather than Mother Al-Kabulan. For this reason, I am explaining in the text that my people have done their customs, traditions, and biblical and secular Judaism, and their response to European and European American Talmudic rabbinical Judaism as against our own African and African American Toradic Judaism and way of life. So now he's juxtaposing the difference between the Talmudic rabbinical Judaism and the African American Toradic Judaism or way of life. So he's showing that in his book, he's showing a difference between the two, and how the worldview of the so-called white Jews does not fit in the worldview of African Jews, and we must see it from a more African-based perspective, right? And again, I said this before, when I say Africa, I'm talking about an entire continent or an entire tectonic plate, and all the tribes that reside on that plate, according to the biblical narrative of the culture of our cultural subscription. It is divided into Shemites and Hamites, and in doing that division, there are many peoples that spring out of them. But again, because the text itself was only looking at from the vantage point of their worldview at the time, they were only able to identify certain tribes, not all tribes that come out of those tribes, but only certain tribes. So that's why we don't see a lot of West African tribes, because a lot of migrations occurred from Northeast, Central, and South Africa towards the West, as well as from the quote-unquote Asia Minor area towards the West. So we have an amalgamation and conglomeration of so-called Shemites and Hamites that reside on the continent of Africa, and by proxy of their relationship to the continent of Africa or the tectonic plate of Africa, they are Africans by that definition, but they are subdivided into various groups, which we identify according to the cultural literature as being Hamitic and Shemitic tribes. All right, I want to make sure I make that clear. All right, he says Judaism, Hebraism, or whatever else anyone likes to call the practice of the current theosophy, in the Holy Torah, 5 books of Moses, must be ready to face the 21st century CE, totally updated, minus the overthrows of Jewish racism and religious bigotry. Such practices were inherited from the racists and religious bigots who wrote their 6th century CE European version of the Babylonian Talmud, upon which all of the anti-African propaganda seems to be based. So for my opponent to attack me and not even knowing this element of my inherited culture, but because he didn't have a formal dialogue with me to ascertain any of these things, we see from one of the grandmaster teachers that he quotes from, Brother Jabari quotes from, which is Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan. He says specifically here, the approach that we have to take to ensure that our methodology supports the African Jewry perspective and not the white Jewish perspective. And again, this is the work that I am engaged in, and that I continuously reconstruct from the ground up to represent to our community, so we have a more distinct worldview that we can juxtapose against theirs, right? Or that's diametrically opposed to theirs. And again, all the stuff that he's laid out in this work, I have built upon, and I started building on it before I even read the entire book. And then when I read the book, I was like, damn, you know, Dr. Ben was on the right course, but he deviated off because he found too many issues with the white Jewish community and try to validate himself via the white Jewish community, which the black Jews in America attempted to do as well, and cause themselves to be disenfranchised, but saw that as a negative thing. I don't see that as a negative thing. I see that as a positive thing, that we are ushering brand new work to solidify our community from within our community, not going to the oppressor to verify or validate us, but from within our community, using the same methodology they use, the same data that they use, to reconstruct our history that has been glossed over, that has been buried under the rug, that's been designed to disenfranchise us from being the descendants of the biblical Israelites. Okay, so let's move forward. Dr. Ben testifies to my matrilineal heritage, right? If you reread the Black Jews, volume 1 and 2, it says the fact that it's always a matter of treating Judaism and Jewishness with being white and or Semitic is the same fact that those who are black or Semitic will always fight back, until such time that white Jews are willing to accept the fact that they are Jews who are not white and have as much right, he's talking about the African Jews, as much right as they have in claiming a heritage that goes back to the biblical characters in the sacred Torah. Remember, he said claiming a heritage that goes back to the biblical characters in the sacred Torah. There will always be a need for clarity between just who is right or wrong in the so-called black-white confrontation between all who identify by either of these two words, black or white. Now, again, a lot of this was overwhelming to Dr. Ben, and he just left African Jewry alone and picked up something diametrically opposed to what his opponents or his enemies rejected, right? But those of us are still picking up this work. And again, he laid it out, say, even though I have my worldview, I'm not dissuading anybody else from going down this road. So anybody who subscribes to Dr. Ben and accept we the Black Jews cannot speak against the methodology, the approach, the inheritance, the culture, all that model, that paradigm that I've formulated to resolve society ills in our community. They cannot speak against it because Dr. Ben laid out already in advance the work that needs to be done in that community in order for us to remove ourselves from those who oppress us, who call themselves white Jews. All right. One of the most ancient, if not in fact, not the most existing organized governmental society of history today is the Kingdom and Empire of Aksum, which has become known as Ethiopia, and which the Hebrews or Israelites call Kush, also today's Ethiopia. The Arabs and Turks called it Habashtan and Abyssinia, respectively. This land is the present home of the so-called Falashas, which means migrants, right? The Agar, the Kailas, the Beta Israel, Ethiopian Jews, and Black Jews, and the offshoots that wandered off to the lands in the Americas, Caribbean islands, and elsewhere, all of whom are about to examine further historically. We're about to examine further historically. This land, Ethiopia, historically is even older than Nubia, Babylon, Sumeria, Egypt, Israel, and many other nations of ancient days, most of which are not in existence today. Tameri or Kemet, which we will call Egypt henceforth, is the same nation of the indigenous woolly-haired, burnt-skinned Africans from whence the pre-biblical and biblical pharaohs and other African leaders originated. It is and their indigenous African populations. Thus, I have selected only those portions I thought to be of greatest importance to the introduction of your very short safari visitor journey with all of us, Falashas, Black Jews, Black Israelites, Kailas, Beta Israel, etc., in our original indigenous homeland, Ethiopia, East Al-Kabulon, which is Africa or Africa. This, I hope, will make you understand that much more the origin of the same group of people who have extended their living quarters to the Americas and the Caribbean islands. And Ethiopia is known as the land of the Negus or Negusi, the land of kings of kings. So again, we see Dr. Ben also validating the Hebrew Israelite culture. Okay, and his objective was to do corrective history. You know, that phrase that Brother Jewry kept saying. This is what Dr. Ben was doing, and he laid a blueprint for anybody who decided they wanted to pick it up and build on top of that. And he was telling people, just because I don't subscribe to that no more, that doesn't mean that I'm dissuading people from doing it. But if you're going to do it, update your information. That is exactly what DivineProspect is doing. And you would think that somebody who subscribes to Dr. Ben, who I was debating, will be able to appreciate my methodology, my research, my subscription, and my fortitude to update this information, to correct it and reconstruct it and represent it back to our community, that they will see that this is an endeavor that is keeping Dr. Ben's legacy alive. You would think that, right? If he would have actually went back and diligently watched my material before we had a debate, or even had somebody else do it and relay it back to him, he would better appreciate it. But no, he came there for a fight. I came there to school him, to let him know, listen, you're going against Dr. Ben's work by debating me. That's what you're doing. And I brought the proof. But unfortunately, I didn't get to show all of this at the debate, but you guys can see it right now. And the official video will have all of this prepackaged for y'all and a nice, tidy, polished presentation that y'all can absorb, you can eat up, and y'all can share, all right? So he says, this Negro empire also included the kingdom of Yemen, the land of the southwestern tip of Arabian Peninsula, where the Jews came to secure haven as they fled the Assyrian oppressors and slave masters. This is what Dr. Ben is saying. So during the Assyrian siege, 721 to 701, right, we have these northern tribes that are retreating into where? Kush, Ethiopia, okay? He says, this even as late as the year 7 CE, following the destruction of the second Jewish commonwealth of ancient Israel, many of the Jews of their tribal groupings called Benjamin and Judah fled to the kingdom of Yemen. This is what Dr. Ben is saying, where they received the protection of their cursed Negro brothers and sisters. Now, Dr. Ben shouldn't have said cursed, but he was saying that from the worldview of the standing Orthodox Jews, all right, who or white people or white Christians that subscribe to this as him being cursed. He said this debt is being somewhat repaid today. Many remained in Israel, but others found their way as far as the west coast, of Al-Kabulon and the kingdom and empire of Ghana, Mele, Songhai, Edo, Mauritania, Nazadeh, etc. much later. This is Dr. Ben's words. He's telling you there was a migration from the Assyrian siege into Yemen, right, and into Kush and Ethiopia. And after the destruction of the temple in 70 CE, there was another migration of Judah and Benjamin. So northern tribes also retreated into Yemen. Northern tribes also retreated into Kush and Ethiopia. And he says in 70 AD, which was over 700 years later, we have another influx of these individuals coming from Benjamin and Judah. This is Dr. Ben's words. Let's keep reading. From his book called African Origins of the Major Western Religions, it says, in North Africa, just before the period of Christianity's legal entry into Rome, due to Constantine the Great's conversion in the 4th century, there were many Hebrew tribes that are of indigenous African origin. These African Jews, as all other romanticized Africans of this era, were caught in a rebellion in Cyrene during the 115 CE against imperialism and colonialism. This rebellion also marked the beginning of a mass Jewish migration southward into Sudan, along the way of the city of Air, and into the countries of Futa, Jalan, and Senegambia, which lie below the parabolic curve of the Niger River's most northern reaches, where the city of Timbuktu, etc., Mali presently stands. These Jews were divided into two main groups and took separate directions further southward into West and Central Africa. One group joined the Fulanis of Futa Jalan, from whom the present population of indigenous Africans of Bornu and Kemet and Nigeria inherited their Hebrew traditions. This indigenous African Jewish penetration from North Africa into the Sudan even reached the borders of Lake Chad in Central Africa. All right, family? So I just want to make sure y'all understand that. This is Dr. Ben's words. This is not my words. This is Dr. Ben saying it. So I wanted to present this information at the debate to see if he's going to sit here and say Dr. Ben was out of his mind. Because all the stuff that Dr. Ben says here, I've done work to validate it. And you can go back and look at some of my lectures, which I've done to validate all of these conclusions that he's making. And you would think that Brother Jabari would appreciate that type of work, but no, he doesn't. He came with an agenda. He hates the Bible. You know, and Abrahamic faiths or religions are anti-African. I mean, that's what's his mindset. All right. So we see the type of person we're dealing with. All right. Let's move forward. Here's an image here: faces and colors of Jews around the world. Jews around the world. Their mothers were Jews, thus they. So according to the Orthodox Jewish standard, if your mother's a Jew, then you're a Jew. Right. They don't go through patrilineal lineage. So Dr. Ben was showcasing that because his mother was that, he also inherited that. And he's also showing you these same people all around the world. He showed you them in Yemen, Spain, China, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Trinidad, Israel, Forest Hills, and New York City, and Brazil, right? And then here, Falasha's Black Jews in the United States of America, the Black Jews of Harlem. Who decides that Jewishness? Is there a Jewish race? What color is the Jewish race? Again, Dr. Ben goes into all of this stuff in volume 2 of We the Black Jews. And if any of you haven't read it, I would advise you to read this book. Okay, because it's very influential to the work that we're trying to do in the Hebrew Israelite community. All right. Now, what is one of Dr. Ben's sources for Black Jews? That's very interesting. Look at this. We the Black Jews. On the other hand, not a solitary African Black woman, man, or child of any religion was involved in any aspect of the genocide, Holocaust, and or enslavement of Jews in Europe at any period. The opposite is true for European, Euro-English, and Euro-American Jews who were committed to genocide, Holocaust, and or enslavement of countless Africans, Black Jews included. See what? Joseph J. Williams, Hebrewisms of West Africa. So anybody that talks negatively against Joseph J. Williams, Hebrewisms of West Africa, are not aware that Dr. Ben used that as one of the sources to come to his conclusions. Okay. Okay. All right. Somebody says, I thought determining your lineage through your mother was error. No, what I'm doing is, again, remember my strategy. I am dealing with an opponent who puts more emphasis on the mother feminine element than the masculine element. So I'm going to one of their master teachers who's also using the same validation method through his mother's lineage, and I'm showing you through my mother's lineage how I've inherited this culture that has been dead through maybe 3-4 previous generations before it got down to me. So this was a strategic move, a chess move on my part, to see them speak against something that their master teacher subscribed to, right? To see how they would approach me going or using that angle. And as you can see at the debate, he sidestepped that and says, well, what about your patrilineal lineage? If we get into patrilineage, that's a totally different conversation, right? That I can have with you, but I wasn't trying to deal with that. And my patrilineage, some of it comes from the Igbo peoples, right? But again, I had to do another DNA test and do more research on that line, which I've done some, but I've not completed all the work in that area because, again, I'm saving a lot of this stuff for my documentary that's coming up, okay, where I'll be traveling to Africa and to Israel and retrieving all this information. So this is going to probably be a long, extensive, it's going to take a lot of time to put this documentary together. But once it's done, you guys will see whether or not I'm still going to subscribe to being an Israelite or I'm not, based on the data that I'm able to aggregate from my research, okay? You also already know the answer because you see I'm still Israelite, but this the purpose of the documentary is to showcase a lot of this information that has been glossed over and that has not been investigated purposely, right? Because it'll validate our claims to our inheritance, okay? So, can't speak about Joseph J. Williams, Hebrews in West Africa. So I advise you guys to read it. It's a pretty good read. Some of the information is outdated. It can be updated, you know, just like From Babylon to Timbuktu is also a great read, but some of the information in it is outdated and needs to be updated. And that's exactly what I've been doing. But you cannot knock us from using these two books when especially one of them has been sourced by the Grand Master Teacher himself, Dr. Ben. All right, let's move forward. And and remember this, Dr. Ben spoke highly of Ethiopia and how Ethiopia is crucial for us finding our identity. And this is what I brought out at the debate and in part one of this Crows on a Strawman presentation. And my opponent spoke against it in the video, the pre-debate video that he did with Shaka. Oh, how can you paint all of Africa with a broad brush, all of Africa with the broad stroke of Ethiopia, and everything is not about Ethiopia? But then he said he's a Garveyite, and I put up the quotes where Garvey was saying that Ethiopia, you know, once Ethiopia is fixed, it's going to be a light unto all the nations around the world. And here's Dr. Ben also making reference to Ethiopia being the motherland, etc. How can you speak against me referencing Ethiopia in an old 2014 lecture when we have your master teacher that's referencing it here, and we have a Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who you claim to be a Garveyite of, is also subscribing to the importance of Ethiopia? How could you leave Ethiopia out of the equation? That's crazy. That's against Pan-Africanism. That's against solidarity. That's against the RBG flag. That's against all of that. So how dare you talk down about Ethiopia? Come on, man. Let's stop playing these games. Let's move forward. Now, let's read this. Who are the Beta Israel Falasha African Jews, for those of you who may not be familiar with them? I'm going to explain it, okay? A 9th century tradition based on the story of Eldad Hadani, the Danite, maintains that during the rift between Rehoboam, son of Solomon, and Jeroboam, son of Nebat, leaders of the kingdoms of Judah and Israel respectively, the tribe of Dan chose not to be drawn into tribal disputes. You know, there's a lot of talk about the tribe of Dan, right? To avoid the impending civil war, they resettled in Egypt. That's where a majority of Dan went. It says, once there, the Danites continued southward up the Nile, because, you know, when you go south, you're going up the Nile in regards to elevation, looking at the geology or the lithosphere of the Earth's crust. And it says, southwards up the Nile to the surf land of Cush, today in Sudan and Ethiopia, and found it to be rich in resources. Eldad Hadani himself was probably from this area. According to his report, members of the tribes of Naphtali, Gad, and Asher lived there together with the Danites, and he himself could trace his ancestry back to Dan, son of Jacob. So we see that this story, right, or this historical account aligns with what Dr. Ben was saying. Okay. This tradition, which may have a certain biblical basis, is also found in other medieval sources. Rabbi Obadiah of Ber-Tenoro came across 2 Abyssinian Jewish prisoners of war in Egypt in the late 15th century and wrote that they claimed to be descended from the tribe of Dan. Rabbi Dawid ben Zimra ruled in his 16th century responsa that the Jews of Ethiopia were unquestionably Danites who had resettled in Abyssinia, possibly even before the Second Temple period. At the time when the 10 tribes were exiled to Assyria during the reign of King Hosea, son of Elah of Israel, approximately 1 century before the first temple was destroyed and Judah was exiled, the prophet Isaiah prophesied at the end of days when the dispersed people of Israel and Judah would be gathered in from their place of exile. Cush is one of those places mentioned. After the destruction of the first temple, the Jewish community in Egypt expanded. Findings discovered at the beginning of this century in Yev El-Fatin in southern Egypt on the Nile near Aswan, the area of biblical Pathros, indicate that these Jewish communities in the Sudanese border dating at least to the return to Zion in the Persian period. The Jews of Yev, like those of Abyssinia, built a temple and performed sacrifices, but did not reject the sanctity of Jerusalem and its temple. Similarly, Onias' temple in Lower Egypt dates from the Second Temple period. Other similarities in traditions and special customs support the evidence of a link between the ancient Egyptian Jews and those of Ethiopia. Other sources tell of many Jews who were brought as prisoners of war from Eretz Israel by Ptolemy and also settled on the border of his kingdom with Nubia and the Sudan. It can therefore be assumed that the Jewish communities in Pathros were destroyed and that the Jews headed south in search of a new place to live along the most convenient route up the Nile via Sudan towards resources around Lake Tana in northwest Ethiopia. Ethiopian Jews live there to this day. And some of these migrants, offshoot of them, also went further south into South Africa and became the Lember tribes peoples. Okay, let's move forward. All right. Now, if you look at this quote at the very bottom right, it says, "Thus I, a former believing Gadite and son of a so-called Falasha from Gondar province, Ethiopia, Kush, East Africa." That's from Dr. Ben Yosef Buchanan. So Dr. Ben, he abdicated his Gadite heritage and decided to pick up ancient Kemet and do research in that area. But he also admitted by proxy of this quote that the Beta Israel or Falashas are Gadites from the tribe of Gad. And all this other evidence that I'm showing you validates this from his own mouth, as well as this objective historical views as well. All right, let's move forward. Now, identity. This is important. The Beta Israel have traditionally attributed their descent to the Israelite tribe of Dan. On the other hand, they were commonly identified by the Abyssinians with prejudice as strangers, Falashas, and as being inferior. The Israelite Jewish identity of the group is historically well established across a vast spectrum of resources. Notable of these was the 9th century Jewish scholar Eldad Hadani, whose very name translates to Eldad the Danite, and who identifies himself as a citizen of a Jewish state beyond the rivers of Cush. Eldad was precise about the unique Israelite identity of his people from the tribe of Dan. Others include the 12th century traveler Benjamin of Tudela, who refers to Israelites in the mountains proximate to Nubia, i.e. the medieval name of the Nile Valley area of Kush in northern Sudan. This is pre-colonial times. Also worth mentioning is the chief rabbi of Egypt, who wrote in the 16th century confirming the origin of the Beta Israel as Jews from the tribe of Dan. And there's a citation right there. Thus, in context of the historical, archaeological, and geographical indications, it is reasonable to suggest that the first Jewish elements within Aksum trace to Cush. A number of accounts, including those provided in Beta Israel traditions, suggest that the ancestors of the group arrived through the Nile Valley. As mentioned, biblical passages, in addition to a number of extra biblical traditions, suggest an Israelite presence in Cush, particularly in Zephaniah 3:10, "From beyond the rivers of Cush, my worshipers, my scattered people will bring me offerings." In addition to Eldad Hadani, Obadiah of Bertinoro during the 15th century suggests that the spices sold by the Cushites come from the Beta Israel, and Chief Rabbi Dawid ibn Zimra of Egypt in the 16th century identifies the Beta Israel as the Jews from the land of Cush. All right, and this goes to reinforce this, and this is two witnesses from two different sources that validate the identity and the provenance of these Falashas or Beta Jews, where the majority of them being Gadites. Okay, Danites. And then some of them also claiming to be Gadites, because we see that you had Gad, Asher, and Naphtali that was also there with the Danites. And Dr. Yosef Ben Buchanan had claimed his lineage to Gad, who was there amongst the Danites, and Naphtali and Asher, who also lived there in the region of Ethiopia. So these were the tribes that was identified that was living there in Ethiopia. Naphtali, Gad, Asher. So all of them wasn't dispersed in all the other areas, but they were also there in Ethiopia. This is very important. And again, Dr. Ben traces his lineage back to Gad, who was amongst the Danites, who were part of the Beta Israel or Ethiopian Jews of African Jewry. Let's move forward. All right. Extra biblical evidence for the antiquity of the tribe of Gad and its relation to ancient Israel. Do we have any extra biblical evidence from antiquity to validate the existence of the tribe of Gad and its relation to ancient Israel? Because there's some people that say that there's no such thing as a tribe of Gad in ancient history. Really? Okay, let's look into that. This is the Misha Stela, or the Moabite Stone. Okay, and let's read this. Okay, starting at verse 1, it says, "I am Misha, son of Chemosh Yati, the king of Moab, the Dibonite. My father had reigned over Moab for 30 years, and I reigned after my father. And I made this high place for Hemesh at Karkor. because he has delivered me from all kings, and because he has made me triumph over all my enemies. As for Omri, the king of Israel, so they're acknowledging that Israel is a nation state, and they're acknowledging the king over that nation state. And he humbled Moab for many years, days, which we see in the biblical account. For Chemosh was angry with his land, and his son reigned in his place. And he also said, I will oppress Moab. And my days he said so. But I triumphed over him and overtook his house, and Israel has perished. It has perished forever. And Omri took possession of the whole land of Medeba, and he lived there in his days and half the days of his son Ahab. So they acknowledge Ahab and his existence as being a real character. 40 years. Now remember, this is written by the enemies of Israel, which means that they have no agenda for making things up. Okay, keep that in mind when reconstructing historical accounts. It's very good to get evidence from your enemy because they are not biased. Okay, it says, but Chemosh restored it in my days, and I built Baal Meon, and I built a water reservoir in it, and I built Kiryatin, and the men of Gad lived in the land of Ataroth from ancient times, and the king of Israel built Ataroth for himself, and I fought against the city and captured it, and I killed all the people of the city as a sacrifice for Chemosh and for Moab, and I brought back the 5 hearth of his uncle from there, and I brought it before the face of Chemosh and Kerioth, and I made the men of Sharon live there, as well as the men of Maharit. And Chemosh said to me, go take Nebo from Israel. And I went in the night and fought against it from the daybreak until midday, and I took it, and I killed the whole population, which is 7,000 male subjects and aliens, and female subject aliens and servant girls. Again, we see that the execution of an entire group of people was something that was done in ancient times or ancient antiquities, nothing new. But remember, he didn't kill all of Gad, because when you look on a map, you'll see where Gad is at, and you'll see where Moab is at. So Moab was not directly facing Gad, but it was a city that these Gadites had lived. Okay, and this is very important. And remember when I said Gad was also intermingled with Naphtali and Asher, along with the Danites. They were all one group of Israelites who made up the Beta Israel peoples. Okay, so he goes to say here, for I have devoted them to destruction for their God, or their power, Ashtar, Chemosh, and for there I took the vessels of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, and I presented them before the face of Chemosh, and the king of Israel had built Yahaz, and he stayed there throughout his campaign against me, and Hamas drove him away before my face. So now we have a linking of Israel, Ahab, Omri, Gad, and Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, which also triangulates the Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh element with Israel, with Gad, with the 2 kings, Omri and Ahab, which goes to validate the various streams of information during the late Bronze Age, going into the early Iron Age, that was synthesized or coming together to flow through the stream, where now other outside cultures are now linking all of these people up together and give you more information, which helps solidifies my outline for the ethnogenesis of the ancient Israelites. Okay, but what I want to show you here is that the tribe of Gad was a real tribe that was in Israel, and that they worship Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. We see all of this evidence right here. It's indisputable. It's unrefutable, because this is from an enemy that's writing it, and it's unbiased. Okay, and when we go into other artifacts, which I'll do in the Minority Report Part 2, I'm going to show you other artifacts that also validates the things that you see here in the Moabite Stela, some of which our community has never seen, but I'm going to bring it out. So the tribe of Gad was a legit tribe, and they were part of Israel, the northern tribe of Israel. Why? Because we're talking about Omri and Ahab, who was over the northern tribes of Israel, not Judah and Benjamin. Okay, let's move forward, family. Let's move forward. Yeah, let's move forward. Let's move forward. For further reading on the Beta Israel Falasha African Jews, if you guys want to go back and do some readings, here's some books that I have that you can go back and get yourself. One is called From Dr. Sharon Shalom, From Sinai to Ethiopia. The other one is for the Beta Israel and Ethiopian Israel Studies on the Ethiopian Jews, edited by Tudor Parfit and Emanuela Trevisian Semi. And the other one is The Beta Israel Falasha in Ethiopia from Earliest Times to the 20th Century by Stephen Kaplan. You can go get these 3 books, which are good reads. Look at the pros and cons of it, and be able to formulate for yourself or judge for yourself the actual story of these Beta Israel Falasha Jews, which was mainly Danites, but then also made up of Gadites, Asherites, and Naphtalites, or from Naphtali. All right, let's move forward. Right. Now, what is the ISSAJ? And this is very pivotal because I am now a tentative member of the ISSAJ. And this organization allows me to validate the stuff that I teach to you guys from my worldview. And now, Brother Jabari has not done any homework on me, so he's not aware of the various organizations that I'm part of, this being one of them. And this is the one that's going to assist me with my documentary. Let's find out what this is. The International Society for the Study of African Jewry is a community of scholars and students engaged in the study of African Jewry and its diverse cultures, historical environments, religious beliefs, and practices. The objectives of ISSAJ are to facilitate scholarly collaboration, research, and discussion, and to disseminate research findings through regular conferences and newsletters. The ISSAJ members are an international, interdisciplinary community of scholars and students in African studies, Jewish studies, ethnology, social anthropology, modern history, history of religions, and history of ideas. Right now, we go to look at the ISSAJ. Here's the various groups that they deal with. In Mali is the Zahor, and in Cape Verde Islands is the Israel Friendship Society. In Ghana is the House of Israel. In Nigeria is the Igbo peoples. Cameroon is Beth Yasharon, and the Democratic Republic of Congo is the Baluba Jews. In Ethiopia is the Beta Israel. Beth Abraham. In Uganda is the Abba Udaya. The Kenya is the Kasuku Jewish community. Rwanda and Burundi is the Tutsi Jews of Havila. And Madagascar is the descendants of Dawid. And Zimbabwe is the Jews of Rusape. And in South Africa and Zimbabwe is the Lemba tribes. All right. Edith Ruder, she's the one overseeing this organization. She is very unbiased to biased in regards to her ascertaining on who some of these tribes came from. She believes that a lot of them were converts, but also identifies the authenticity of some of these tribes actually having a true migrational origin from ancient Israel, right? Who have retained these ancient practices. And one of those groups of people that is admitted is the Beta Israel. Okay, this is very important that I'm part of this organization and I'm able to get this information and bring it back. I'm also a tentative member of the ARCE, which is the Egyptology conferences and organization that the renowned Egyptologists come and have conferences where they discuss all of these new findings and information on ancient Kemet. And I'm also a tentative member of that, right? Which is interesting because now you see I'm working on this angle for the ISSJ, and then I'm doing ARCE, and I'm working with both organizations to retrieve information, to synthesize it and represent it back to our community. Stuff that we would never get our hands or our eyes on, I'm bringing it back to you guys so we can do the research from within and we can create an endogenous model for our ethnogenesis here, deriving from biblical descendants, okay, or descendants of the biblical Israelites or the ancient Israelites, okay? This is very important, family, and I hope you guys support my endeavors because this is not an easy task. You know, I have to make a lot of sacrifices to deal with these organizations, to do this type of research, to bring it back to you guys, right? And you would think that somebody who supports Dr. Ben would be able to admire and appreciate the work that I've done to reconstruct our worldview of how we see our culture that has been handed down to us by our ancestors, okay? This is very important stuff, all right? Now, we get into my last slide, which is solution. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because at the debate, Jabari didn't give no real solution. He was just expressing his frustration and disappointment and everybody not believing they're the same people. And I'm like, but you're a Garveyite. How are you going to be upset that everybody's not agreeing they're the same people when Garvey even said himself, he doesn't care what you believe. Come to the table and let's deal with things that we have commonly together that we are experiencing as a community. But apparently he claims to be a Garveyite, but not once mentioned or gave a quote from Garvey, nor gave a solution based on Garvey's methods. But he also admitted that Garvey used the Bible. And he has no qualms with Garvey using the Bible because it was something that he used in his day of time. And that's what he had access to. But I told him, I said, listen, if me and Garvey was cool today, Garvey would use me and put me on his research team because he'll see that all the information that he used from the Bible to inspire him to do what he did, I'm giving him the anthropological evidence to substantiate that. And being that he was in the Caribbean islands, a quaint possibility that he could also be descended from the ancient Israelites as well. If I gave this information to Garvey, he would stay where he's at. Not saying that maybe he may have abdicated if he's seen other worldviews. That's a possibility. But I believe strongly that because I share the principles that he brought forth, and I'm able to show him the scholarship behind those principles and my identity, where he can relate because he had Hebrew Israelites or Black Jews in his congregation. So he had an affinity towards these Black Jews that Dr. Ben speaks of in We the Black Jews that I just showed y'all earlier. So he would have more than likely continued with that tradition. And he was not anti-African. So again, you guys can see how my worldview is being formulated, okay? And this is what I'm trying to convey to the brother, because he brought no solution. But the basis or the foundation for these principles of this RBG methodology come from the Bible, and for the solidarity of Africans worldwide and diaspora, and from Pan-Africanism. So Garvey used the Bible as a foundation to launch this. So if I subscribe to the RBG model, it is based on a biblical worldview from the leader who created and instituted the flag. So how could you say, because I subscribe to the Bible and I subscribe to my culture and inheritance from the ancient Israelites, how that is contrary to being RBG? Do you see how fallacious that is, especially when Marcus Garvey was speaking highly of Ethiopia, because the Black Jews he was dealing with during his time, right? Josiah Ford and the rest of them will all claim lineage from Ethiopia, being African Jews. So anybody modern day times who tries to say if you use the Bible or if you claim Hebrew Israelite lineage that you're in opposition to RBG, they don't know what the heck that is. They should not be calling themselves a Garveyite, and they should not be waving that flag. They should not be doing that, because that's a dishonor to Marcus Garvey. But interestingly enough, I mentioned several quotes from Marcus Garvey during the debate, and I didn't hear not one from my opponent who claims to be a Garveyite and claims to have studied him in college. Okay, so the solution is, and you guys seen the debate, which was the most important part of the debate, and why I say that I put the nail in the coffin in the debate, because after everything that I showed in my rebuttal to my discourse with him, where he was, he was preventing me and hindering me from bringing out the 50+ questions that I wrote when he gave his presentation. And he kept giving me a circular path back into his argumentation, which he was building a straw man that he wanted me to wear and dress up so he can beat up. And after all of that foolery, the bottom line is which one can liberate our community. And he didn't bring no solutions, even though in his book, he mentioned solutions in his book about revitalizing the Black self-image. It's in his book. And he gave methods into it: study group sessions, building our own institutions, controlling media. He gave you solutions in his book, but he didn't present not one at the debate. All he did was express his frustration, which to me, that ends the game right there. And where did I get my foundation for my solution from? Let's go ahead and look at it. Devarim 6:1, Deuteronomy 6:1. Now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the judgments to teach you that you might do them in the land. Yirmiyahu 29:4, Jeremiah 29:4, to those carried into exile, which I said that so-called Africans and diaspora here in America were carried into exile. Build houses, settle down, plant gardens, and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city. If it prospers, you too will prosper. This is all founded in Scripture. What is that? Here's the tree diagram that I showed. Culture is what we get from the statute, law, and the commandments. The sum of, and from the compilation of the Tanakh, the sum of attitudes, customs, and beliefs that distinguishes one group of people from another. Culture transmitted through language, material objects, ritual, institutions, and art from one generation to another. Statute, laws, and commandments is a governmental paradigm. It is a form of politics, right, that involves the cooperation of the civics of the people to reenact the social construct that was handed down to them from their ancestors to preserve their existence and to ensure that they continue to contribute to it as time progresses, but never move away from the ancient landmark that was laid down by their ancestors. The Scriptures gives us this element of culture. It gives it to us. And when you install culture, then you can rise up as a community, which is the people of a distinct district or country considered collectively, especially in the context of social values and responsibilities, a united body of individuals or people with common interests living in a particular area. So you cannot have a community unless you have culture. And this is exactly what the Scriptures teach us. Even when you look at Nehemiah, Ezra, Zerubbabel returning back, this is what they were reinstituting the culture when they found the book. And they reinstituted culture so that way they could be a collective community. And then they can do the third part, which we see in Yirmiyahu 29:4, which is autonomy, freedom from external control or influence, independent self-governance. They were aggregationalists. They retrieved resources from the Persian government and they used those resources to bring back to their community to rebuild the temple, the city, and the walls. And in doing so, they were able to install their own culture, have their own community, and be autonomous, because at that point, they were a self-governing body that was allowed liberty, not freedom, but allowed liberty by their captors. This is very important, family. And I have the colors red, black, and green, because if somebody decides to adhere to Hebrew Israelite subscription, this is what they have, the model they have to follow in order for us to have some breathing room. Shout out to Brother Uzi, some breathing room or some quality of life to enjoy the blessings until we are redeemed from our Creator, from this captivity, and placed in our ideal state, okay, which is in the promised land, quote unquote promised land. But even if somebody does not subscribe to Hebrew Israelite culture, we can still deal with them from the RBG perspective, which means leave your numerator at the door, which is whatever your personal ideological description is, and let's work on the common denominator issues that we both face in our communities day to day: police brutality, poverty, lack of a political voice, health issues, etc. And let's extract solutions from our ideological subscriptions and put it in an objective format that we can then present to each other, cross-exchange resources, knowledge base, disinformation tools, accessibility to certain areas of society, and let's exchange these things so we can ensure the survival of indigenous, black, quote unquote, black or African American people, and those who adhere to us, which will be our brown brothers and sisters, so we can be able to sustain ourselves and our captivity, so that we can have a breathing room or quality of life, so then we can have more of these discussions that pertain to our numerators. So the element of RBG is still there, right? I don't care if you're Kemetic, I don't care if you're Moor, I don't care if you're Black Muslim, I don't care if you're whatever you want to subscribe to. But when it comes to enacting solutions that can resolve the social societal ills that we face in our communities, I'm showing you that my culture, right, my subscription to my Hebrew Israelite descent provides a solution, and I can extract from that and create objective models that I can then cross exchange with my trades, my knowledge, my database of skill sets that I have, and be able to give it to another community in exchange for the same thing from them that can fix and build our community. And one thing that we stress as Hebrew Israelites is that you need a moral code of ethics in order for you to ensure that everybody's contractually obligated to one another, and that they will not impose upon the rights that another group has in dealing with each other from this denominator worldview, right? If we're to come together and cross-exchange resources. I do not compromise my spiritual subscription when I come under the auspices of RBG. I still have it. The thing is that now I'm dealing objectively for people who don't subscribe to that authority, and the purpose of me doing so is so that we can ensure our survival until we are further redeemed. This is very, very important, and it's crucial to our continual or perpetual preservation here in America, or if we decide to repatriate and go abroad. This is important. This is why solidarity is important, right? With our brothers and sisters that's on the continent of America, and Africans in the diaspora, and those who subscribe to being Israelites in the four corners of the world, and why this concept of Pan-Africanism and assisting or bringing our IP to the AU or the African Union member states, because they have programs that are open for us, and they don't care what our subscription is. We can take advantage of these programs, so that way we can enjoy the blessings that come with Torah, because we will be the light unto these nations. And the scripture says that the wealth of the sinners is laid up for the righteous. That is what we have to do. We have to be aggregationists. Go into the matrix, grab and aggregate these resources, and pull it back into our communities to build our communities. And this was the solution that I gave in a nutshell at the debate. And this is a solution that I am now putting on record, and I'm providing to you guys today. So it's very sad when my opponent can't even give you a paradigm like that. It's sad. It's really sad. And you know it's game over. It's game over when he's unable to do that, because that is the crux. And that is the most important part of having a debate. What is the solutions? What is the purpose of aimlessly debating scholarship in ancient history when none of that can solve problems today? Okay. So with that, I'm done with this, family. Okay. I'm done with it. Like I said, I'm going to do an official video where I have to go through each one of these slides all over again. But I'm going to do it for you guys because, again, I am a fan of high quality, polished work, verbal and mental acuity when disseminating my presentations. And I want to make sure I put this in a package that you guys can then identify with yourselves. You can share with people in academia, people who are opponents to your culture, people who use the same arguments that Brother Jabari used, and you can refute them point for point. Okay, and mind you, this is just a shorthand rebuttal refutation. I didn't go into all the other things that he made, because if I did, this would be at least a 350 slide presentation when I actually laid it down theoretically. If I was to deal with all the claims that he made, there's a rebuttal and a refutation for them. There is. But, you know, we have to be meticulous and very particular in how we dissect our opponent's worldview using an appropriate methodology that's academic, and being able to regurgitate back to them that which we are fed and that which we can substantiate. Okay, so let me stop the screen share. Let me stop the screen share. All right. So let me go here. Let's see. Damn, I hope that wasn't messing up the PowerPoint. But anyway, so with that, family, I'm done with the PowerPoint presentation. I'm gonna go to the chat room, and I'm gonna see if y'all have any questions. Real quick. Let's see. Yeah, and I see all the messages people were sending me about the stuck slide, and I apologize again. I apologize for the stuck slide. You know, I didn't catch it, and it's hard to do when you're doing a presentation. You know, so that's why I said I'm gonna give you guys the official version, so that way I compile all the data that you see here in a more cohesive package that doesn't have all of these blank moments of silence, these technical difficulties, and everything like that. All right. So thank you for people who appreciated this lecture. Please, when you go back to watch it, just take your time going through it. You know, I'm saying in advance that there's not in advance, but I'm saying that there is technical difficulties. So there'll be periods of silence, periods of me clicking around, periods of me trying to look at the chat. So just disregard that. Just go to the meat and potatoes of either the audio that I presented, the slides that I showed, and this heritage part all the way to the end, and utilize this and put it together as a preliminary to the official video that I released that would be more cohesive. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for appreciating this PowerPoint presentation. It took a lot to do it. It was not easy, but you know, this is the type of stuff that I bring when I go to a debate. You know, I was told there's no evidence on your part substantiating anything. Bring what you got, and I'm like, no, I can't really bring a 900-point slide a 900 PowerPoint presentation to this debate, but I will reduce it down to 145 slides and bring that to you, so you can see the overwhelming evidence that is in alignment to my subscription. So it had to be 145 because my opponent says there's no evidence. So I had to show him this, you know, and then when I do Minority Report Part 2, you guys can link together all the lectures I did dealing with the ethnogenesis of the ancient Israelites, and you can see the wealth of data. And I think Minority Report may have a Part 3 because there's so much. The wealth of data that substantiates the existence of the ancient Israelites. And it's information and data that people from the Copenhagen School of Biblical Minimalism who are in blackface in the conscious community have not seen and don't want to deal with and cherry pick from. But we're going to give them the raw, and I'm going to be unbiased, showing you the pros and cons and my methodology to my subscription. This is how you do real scholarship. So for somebody who went to college and got a master's degree in history, I would think you'd be using the same methodology when you're approaching our culture, and be able to leave room to say, you know what, I may be wrong. Haven't once heard him say that. All he did was flaunt around his degree, right? And all these trips he took to Egypt and all these years he's been teaching, but he never once said, you know what, this is where my stance is at today. But in interface with my brother Divine, you know, I'm willing to be a student, I'm willing to learn. He never said that. But when I started the debate, I said exactly that. I said, I'm a student first before I'm a teacher. I showed my humility and modesty that I'm willing to learn. You know what I'm saying? And a few things he shared that I did learn that was interesting. At some points of view, he also shared that I disagree with, but I didn't hear before. So all it's doing is making me more astute on how to respond to it. You know what I'm saying? So I learned during that debate. I learned I can never lose when I learn a lesson. When you're learning lessons, you can never lose. You understand? You'll always come out victorious. Okay. So again, yeah, he doesn't respect any Hebrew. He doesn't, you know, but he has to respect the scholarship, because the scholarship is not really biased. There's some elements of subjectivity in it, but for the most part, it's giving you objective data and my conclusion based on that objective data using my inductive analytical methodology. You have to respect that, especially when I source or cite a source such as your master teacher, Dr. Ben. You know, so if you are opposing me, you're kicking against the prick that Dr. Ben had established in his heyday. Okay. All right. And remember, Dr. Ben was still a Jew until his death, right? But that's another discussion altogether, even though he did a lot of work in bringing and making ancient Kemet, bringing it to the masses, the conscious community, which I give him credit for, because I learned a lot from examining that. Because again, I'm not that biased. You know what I'm saying? Even though that may not be my cultural subscription, I can give credit where credit is due. And Dr. Ben did a renowned work in that arena, which paved the way for a lot of people in a Kemetic community to do the studies that they're doing, him and many others. You know, I'm saying that Dr. Ben also left a legacy in regards to his African Jewry roots and what he taught based on that, and saying that even though he moved away from that, he does not take away from anybody that wants to pick up that research and pave a new path by updating it and making it synchronistic with the plight of Africans and the diaspora in the Mafa here in Americas, right? So when people speak against my scholarship and say they hold Dr. Ben up in high regard, they're actually kicking against Dr. Ben and the blueprint that he laid out for people in my community to further update the information and further build. All right. So anyway, all right, let me see what you got in here. Somebody said the Bible is unbiased. Yes, it is. The Bible gives you the pros and cons of this culture. It's not romantic. There's a lot of dirty things in the Bible, and some of my lectures have uncovered that. But I've accepted and I've dealt with it, that this is what happened in ancient times. You know, the last lecture, real lecture I did was called Capital Punishment, Human Sacrifice for the Atonement of Sin in the Bible, where I showed human sacrifice in the Bible from the Israelite culture. That's taboo. But I brought it out because I tell people, I'm not afraid to deal with this. I'm not trying to clean it up. I'm not trying to romanticize it. Let's deal with it for what it is and find the explanation during the worldview or the vantage point of the ancients and why this was sanctioned to do and what it meant. And that's what I dealt with. But again, my opponent has not watched that. So therefore, he has no clue on how I view our text. I'm very objective and very as biased as I can be in analyzing our culture. And I point out the good and the bad and the ugly. I keep it a buck the same way the biblical narrative does. You understand what I'm saying? Let's see. Solomon and Sheba, your delivery is always on point. Thank you, Rodrigo. I appreciate that. Yo, Divine, what is your take on Revelation's tribal list, not including Dan? We see why it doesn't include Dan, because Dan was believed to have been extinguished, right? And a lot of Dan retreated into Ethiopia, and this migration into Ethiopia to the people in 70 AD, a lot of Dan was already in Ethiopia. So they did not really account for where Dan was, right? And also remember, when we read the Moabite Stela, you see that the author of the Moabite Stela said that, you know, he wiped out the Gadites. You know, he said he wiped out the Gadites. So, you know, and we know Dan, we see a closer fitting to Dan, Asher, and Naphtali with Gad, all mingled together. So when we see things in the text that talk about a particular tribe, it's because the lack of awareness of the people in regards to writing the text, in regards to the tribe of Dan, and being able to ascertain what occurred with them, right? So we got to look at other things outside the Bible to see, why is this author writing this and conveying this to its immediate audience? What would they have known in their day about this tribe? You know, this is very, very important. I'll probably do another lesson on that. So I'm a little bit, I don't have a lot of clarity in my mind right now because I'm a little bit tired, but I'll deal with that in more detail another time. All right. I think those ticket sales to Egypt for Jewry tours is going to take a hit. It will if you guys share this everywhere. Share the part 1 and part 2 everywhere. Even with the technical difficulties that people are able to make their way through it, you're going to get a lot of meat that is in direct opposition to all of these false allegations that are made by some people in the Kemetic community. And I have relationships with some brothers in the Kemetic community, right? And we cool. We look at each other's works objectively. We appreciate each other's works, but it's not for them. It's for the people in the Kemetic community that romanticize ancient Egypt and don't show you the pitfalls. That's what I do. I show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of ancient Kemet, like I do of ancient Israel. I'm not biased when it comes to that. And those who kick against the prick of of the Hebrew Israelite community by saying we don't have no real scholarship, we don't use a proper methodology. All of us are not astute and we're college dropouts, or people who didn't finish high school, and people who have no education, people who are bottom feeders, and people from ex-prison. I mean, they say all types of reckless stuff about our community and about the scholarship of our community. Oh, the ancient Israelites did not exist, and there's no record of them, and the Exodus didn't exist. There's no, all of these romantic claims, right, that's adverse towards ancient Israel to help substantiate their validity, so subscribe to ancient Kemet. I'm against that crowd. And that is who my work is geared towards, to opposing. And it's also geared towards uplifting and edifying, equipping, empowering, and encouraging my people. Because I'm a servant of servants before anything else. And that is what a chief leader is. He's the first servant to his community. All right. You want him to give you what he doesn't have. You're right. He didn't have the data. So now I showed it. And if he watched these videos, he'll have to go back and say, damn, you know what? I made a fool of myself at the debate. Because I didn't know that this was the type of Hebrew I was dealing with. And mind you, from a college dropout. I'm a college dropout. You can't be outset by a college dropout. Come on. If that's how you look at it, I don't look at degrees and non-degrees. I look at your heart content, your character, your motives. Why are you doing what you're doing? And are you sincere about building your people? Sans discrimination. That's what I look at. Because a degree don't mean nothing to me if you're not using it to better empower your community. And if you're not humble with it, be humble. All right. Like my man, Kendrick Lamar says, be humble. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm able to admit that I'm a student before I'm a teacher. And my opponent didn't do that. Let me see. What else are y'all saying up in here? False doctrine, idolatry, love your work. What DNA agency do you recommend to examine lineage? AfricanAncestry.com is one site with Dr. Kittles, who does a great job on African ancestry. But you can also do 23andMe and a couple other sites, which are a little cheaper, and they give you, the whole garment of ancestry. African ancestry deals mostly with African tribes and your lineage to African tribes, but the other DNA sites extends to that. But again, you're going to see that they're not consistent. You're going to see a lot of differentiation. If you go to 4 different DNA places, they will agree about 95%, but they'll see 5% marginal error in regards to them extrapolating their data and being able to interpret it for you. And this is very, very important for them, because that 5% can be a big marginal difference. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. Israel was not a racially homogeneous nation, sub-Saharan Neolithic. Okay. Was there a seal of Ramses that showed King Solomon married his daughter? I don't know. But you say Ramses, so you're making Ramses contemporary to Solomon. I don't make Ramses contemporary to Solomon. I don't make Ramses contemporary to Solomon. So I would not believe that that artifact is there, but I'll go back and research and I'll see. It is a real order that we know where all the tribes are to come together as a people. I agree. He says, where can I go to get a peer-reviewed article on the Berlin pedestal inscription that predates the Minnesota Stela? Did I show that? No, I didn't show that in the Minority Report Part 2, but I'll have that in Minority Report Part 2. Part 1, I don't think touched on that. I'm not sure. I can go back and look at it, but Part 2 definitely will touch on that. And I'll give you the various articles that I have that actually deal with that element. All right. Let me see. The ancestors didn't have no paper to prove what they knew. This reminds me of Moreh Yeshaya. Love your work. Tada for the answer. The tribe of Judah, Solomon. Are you writing a textbook? Yes, I'm writing an academic textbook. I'm still working on that as well. Like I said, I'm one person with a few people assisting me. You know what I'm saying? I had to do a reorganization of my organization, a restructure of my organization. So I only have a handful of people that are working with me. I'm doing the bulk of the work. When the website goes live, I'll open it up for people who want to join the organization or want to join the ministry. And then you guys can assist me as well. So that way, any ideas that I have or anything that you have, we can aggregate it and we can get it done. All right. I can give you the direction, the advice to help get it done. All right. I like the fact that you did not once mention Torah sect ideology in your presentation, strictly adhering to the historical record. Exactly. You know why that's important? Because all my opponents will say, oh, you can't prove this outside the Bible. And then when I do, oh, let me take you back to the Bible. Wait, hold on. You telling me I can't prove it outside the Bible. When I start to prove it outside the Bible, now you want to bring me back to the Bible. And then when I start explaining things from the Bible, you say there's no evidence for that outside the Bible. Then I go outside the Bible. You see, it's a cat and mouse game. That's what they play, because they're not exposed to the type of Hebrew Israelite that I am. I'm one of many, right? I'm not the only person that does this, but I represent one of many, and I'm an ambassador for those individuals who deal with the conscious community. Okay, so it's very sad and disheartening when they see that I'm able to work with you on any plane you're willing to work at and do it objectively. They can't deal with that. They want to deal with somebody that's fully religiously dogmatic and is zealous in regards to the text, and their whole worldview is centered on the text, and they can't see nothing outside the text. No, that's not me. When I teach my community, I deal with it from the text primarily as a foundation and use other exogenous information to validate what the text is saying when I teach. But when I deal with external communities, being that I cannot shoulder the appeal to authority to them because they don't subscribe to the cultural paradigm or the text, etc., I had to deal with them from a different angle. And that's what you guys saw at the debate, dealing with the conscious community from a different angle that is not subjective from my cultural worldview. And this is what we have to do as scholars. I have to present my data objectively with no biasness towards my own cultural subscriptions, because that is not important in regards to the realms of academia. I want to get my work in academia so our children who are in college can cite those works, and I can be a pioneer and pave the way for other scholars who are equally as astute as me to be able to do the same thing. This is why I cannot be uncommonly dealing with the conscious community acting like a straight up buffoon, right? Because then that will deduce my sponsorships, my endorsements, and anything that I want to present to academia. So I have to have a particular demeanor when I approach people in these community who have nothing to lose, right? But I have everything to gain and a lot to lose by keeping my composure, keeping my discipline, and maintaining integrity. Number one, because the text that I subscribe to that dictates the mandates for my culture obligates me to. And number two, I'm doing this for the voices of those who are not heard, right, in our community, so their voices can be heard. But being a leader, I have to shoulder this obligation in order to get this data into areas that does not respect our community, right? So I have a lot on the line, and I cannot compromise because of my emotions, my lower self, of my flesh. I cannot cater to that when I interface with my opponents, because that's what they want me to do, so they can disqualify me from the area of the places that I have my foot in and where I'm trying to go. And I will not allow them to do that. I don't care what they say. I will not allow them to do it, because my whole community is riding on my shoulders. Not just me alone. There's other people in my community that does other great works, but this great work that I'm doing, I know that I'm doing it vicariously to win it for the community. So it's not about me. I had to put myself aside and big y'all up. I'm a servant to y'all. So I cannot compromise the race because of how I feel, because I'm indebted to the ones that support me, which is you guys. And I hope that answers that. Does the HOK have anybody to really debate you? It depends on the subject matter. I don't know. If they're using the outdated claims that we saw in Israel Finkelstein's book that I went and showed y'all, where they said themselves, well, you guys have to be the judge to see if our conclusions are correct. That's in the preface of the book. And then we see all these other scholars who is ripping apart Israel Finkelstein's chronology, his speaking on the ethnogenesis of the ancient Israelites, and poking holes at all the flaws in his work. I mean, if they still use that book, they can't debate me. They can't debate me. They shouldn't debate me if they still use that book. They have to look at the general consensus that stands today and the pros and cons for that worldview. So if they want to debate ancient Israelite existence, we could probably debate that. And there's some people who I would give shout outs that would be great opponents for me. But somebody like Jabari isn't. Somebody that would be a great opponent of me are people that study my work, that appreciate and acknowledge my work. Those are the people that I would debate. There's about 3 people like that in the conscious community or on HOK that I would love to sit down and have a dialogue with, because they understand, they appreciate my worldview. They don't draw strawmans and make assumptions because they've seen my work, they're familiar with my work, and they're dealing with me based on my work and their opposition to my work or to certain worldviews. Okay. What's up with this Garfield dude? I don't know. Garfield's Garfield. You know, I'm cool with the brother, but we don't see eye to eye when it comes to certain things in regards to ancient Israel. Actually, we do see eye to eye on some things in regards to Israel, some things we don't. So I don't have any issue with the brother. You know, I think he's a pretty cool brother. But, you know, me and him have differences in regards to our worldview in regards to the ancient Israelites. You know what I'm saying? And he has his particular method and I have mine. you know. But what I will say this, he is a great opponent because he presents a lot of original findings that most of our community is not privy to. And what happens is when he presents these findings, I go back and research it if I'm unaware of it, so I can be prepared to have a solid discussion with him without making assumptions, right? And we're not building straw mans, okay? Are you a member of HOK? They have you in a group picture as if you are. No, I'm not a member of HOK. I mean, I'm on that platform where I defend our community. And what I do is one of the information I put out, I can show you all of the stories and of the people and testimonies of people in that community who are now part of Israel simply because I appeared on that platform. And I provided concrete information to substantiate our culture. And I was able to rebut and refute a lot of the allegations against our community, who they actually were at some point Israelites, but because none of the information, none of their inquiries were being addressed by their leaders in their community, and the conscious community was tearing up the methodology of our community, they decided to side over to other communities. But once I presented my work, presented my disposition, they now appreciate our scholarship from our community, and a lot of them have now crossed back over into being ancient Israel. So I'm not an official member. There's no piece of paper you fill out to say, okay, I'm a member, the application you fill out, I'm a member of HOK. No, I have a rapport with Brother Sinetta, and I use his platform to present our worldview from a scholarly academic perspective, objectively, unbiasedly, right? So that way his platform is exposed to this level of scholarship that we have in our community, okay? Somebody said that the Messiah exists. Go back and look at the lectures on my YouTube channel. One of them is the New Testament Messiah, Hidden History Revealed. Another one is the Patriarchal Priesthood in the Bible, Unveiled. Another one is Capital Punishment, Human Sacrifice for the Atonement of Sin in the Bible. Look at these 3 lectures first, and you'll see my perspective on that. I'll leave it like that. But I'll probably do a follow-up video on that, on some articles that validate his existence outside of the normative ones that we're familiar with. But that's another subject matter altogether. What do you think of Zion Lex info? I think Zion Lex is a force to be reckoned with in the Israelite community. He goes very hard against the Kemetic community. You know, me and him have spoken as of late. You know, we haven't done a lot of speaking previously, but we've spoken a lot as of late, especially dealing with this Jewry character who he's supposed to be debating. I shared some information with him. He told me his perspective on certain things. So we're building a rapport slowly but surely. You know, we have a lot of up and down history, but we're building a rapport slowly but surely. But he has a lot of good information, but I like to give him additional information that he can utilize to add additional tools to his toolshed when he's dealing with this community, right? I would say that he has a great chance of debating a lot of people in his community if he sticks to certain guns and if he's willing to concede to the research of other people in his community that can help fortify him against these opponents. I'm not really interested in debating people who have not studied my work. It's a waste of time, you know, especially if I have not studied their work, it's a waste of time. So I would only debate somebody who's familiar with my work and can look at my work objectively, and I'm familiar with their work and can look at their work objectively. So that way the discussion is based on the opponents and not what's called hasty generalization or sampling a whole group and using that sample to draw a straw man. Those are the only type of debates that I will have, you know, going forward. And, you know, if somebody's not presenting solutions, I definitely am not going to debate you. It's a waste of time for the people if you have no solution. That debate with Jewry was a waste of time. Why? Because at the end, he gave no solution. Unless you're trying to promote his book, wanted you to buy his book to get the solution. But everybody's not going to want to buy the book. Those people that watch the debate ain't going to go buy your book. You have to put the suggestions for solutions on record, which he did not do. All right. So anyway, family, he said, man, Kashoop dropped some heat a couple weeks ago. Yes, he did. And I watched that. Do you have any video recommendations on Northern Kingdom I can utilize or books you recommend? Yes. Go and look at Despierta Mi Gente from Brother Mala'ak of AOC and Brother Awanya Stop of GOCC. And they did a documentary called Despierta Mi Gente. You can contact Brother Mala'ak from AOC on Facebook. And y'all can get the, actually, I have the DVD. I wish I had it in front of me, but I have the DVD. Maybe it's the DVD over there. I have the DVD. Hold on. Let me see if I can, let me see, hold on. Let me see if it's over here. Let's see. Okay, so I can't find it at the moment. I'll probably show you in another live stream. I actually have it, but you definitely want to check out that work, and you'll see the brothers' work in regards to the Northern Kingdom and their scholarly position on that. Because I told them when they asked me for advice, I said the best thing you could do is be able to prove your worldview outside of the Bible extra biblically, and they've done a pretty decent job at doing that. So I got to commend them for that. But another thing that we can't overlook is that even looking at from Babylon to Timbuktu and the references that I showed you, we see that Naphtali, Asher, Gad, and Dan are in Africa. So we have them also in Africa. Now they've been dispersed everywhere else on the four corners of the earth, which I'm not disputing, but we also have to identify them also in Africa. They were also in Africa. That's very important as well. All right. Let's see. Seem like the world hate us, but have an obsession with us as well. Exactly. It's very ironic. Question: is the Mexican part of the 12 tribes? Again, watch Despierta Mi Gente and you judge for yourselves. All right. Somebody did work in there, so I haven't really done work. I mean, I've looked into it. I've come to certain conclusions, but I've left that research to other people to do. So go back and look at the DVD, and from there, you can have that type of discussion in regard to the northern tribes. All right. Where's a good place to start learning Hebrew? Go back to my video that I did called Late Night Scholarship Recap #2, and I give you references to some books that can help you start Hebrew. Go back and watch it. You can email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. And when you email me there, I'll send you those books. I've sent out to some people. I still got to send some more out. I've been backlogged with a whole bunch of emails. So forgive me if it takes a while for me to get to you, but I will get to you. It's just a matter of time. It's just I get a lot of requests. All right. But if you want to learn Hebrew, I teach biblical Hebrew from an intermediate level, a novice to intermediate level. And I also give you the references if you want to learn on your own, and give you the tools so you can learn it at your own time. When my website launches, I'm going to have an Academy module on there, which goes through Hebrew as well to help you guys learn Hebrew. All right. Let's see. By the 12 tribe chart. Do you think Reggie is worth? Do I think Reggie is worth of debating me? Yes, but I don't see a debate between me and Reggie, because me and Reggie agree with a lot and we learn from each other. So it wouldn't really be beneficial for me to debate Reggie. I would have a sit-down discussion, and you can see a previous sit-down discussion that I did with him back in December if you go back to my YouTube channel. But Brother Reggie, he knows my worldview. He was trying to tell Brother Jabari, listen, Divine is not that type of Hebrew. He kept trying to tell him that Jabari did not adhere, not listen to what Brother Reggie was saying, right? So he knows. Brother Ankh Cat, the real black atheist, he knows my worldview, and he deals with me differently. Brother Garfield knows my worldview. He deals with me differently. These three people who are in the HOK community, they are aware of my scholarship, and they don't deal with me like you deal with the regular, dogmatic, religiously zealous Hebrew. They don't deal with me like that because they know I'm not that type of breed of Hebrew, right? But what they try to do is try to tell other people, listen, Divine is in a category of his own. You cannot deal with him like you deal with these other Hebrew Israelites, and they don't listen. And when they don't listen, guess what happens? They get this work. That's simple. They get this work. And this right here, I mean, if people buy Jabari's book after this, okay, let me tell you, family, I didn't buy Brother Jabari's book. I didn't buy it. What I did was I got it from Amazon Kindle Unlimited, which I have a subscription to, and I seen it for free. And I read it for free. So I'm not going to tell nobody don't buy his book. You know, that would be very unfair of me to say something like that, because it's a good read, except for the parts that's biased towards our community. Other than that, it's a great read. So it may be worth it. But for those of you who don't want to invest in it, especially because chapter 4 has to be destroyed after what I said, and he has to update it. If you have Kindle Unlimited on Amazon, the book is available there for no price, no charge to you. You can read it for free, like I did. All right. Let's see. I'm taking 1 or 2 more questions, and then I'm going to end this session, and I'm going to start another session with the live Google Hangouts. And I'm going to invite people onto that Google Hangout so we can interface But as you can see, family, when you guys come to my chat room, with the exception of some trolls, you know, that come once in a while, you see there's unity, there's peace, nobody's arguing, nobody's debating, nobody's fighting. That's the spirit I like to bring when I present things. I don't like to bring a contentious spirit. I don't like to bring a wicked and vile spirit. That's the type of spirit I like to bring to my presentations, to my organization, or people I interface with. I don't bring that type of spirit because it's not edifying, right? So the type of decorum and discipline you guys are exemplifying in the chat room is reflective on my approach to scholarship, edification, proactivism, community building, etc. And I appreciate you guys for being amicable in that chat room. All right. All right. So I don't see no more questions. So I'm gonna wrap this up because this has been long enough. I think this was over 3 hours. So I started at 11. So it was over 3.5 hours, about 3.5 hours. So I'm gonna end this here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, when you go back to watch it, there may be some pockets of time where you may have to bear with me with the technical difficulties. Go back and listen to the audio, and then go back and pause and read over the slides, and you'll be able to get the general consensus of the points that I was trying to convey. Also, you guys can look at the solution part, which is very crucial. And after watching part 1 and part 2, even in the midst of me having a headache, being sleepy or tired, I still got the slides out, I still got the information out, and I still have an official version that's coming out that's going to be more cohesive than what you're seeing part 1 and part 2. But at least the live streams, you guys can see it for free. You guys can see it live. You hear me give you shout outs. Shout out to Nabia Yasharael, who's in there. Chemo Ben Yisrael, shout out. It shall be what it shall be. Radi 513, shout out to you. Shout out to Daradon, that's in there. Who else is here? Yaram Yahu, Yasharel, shout out to you. Obadiah Yisrael, shout out to you. Who else is here who I miss? I want to make sure y'all get shout outs, man, because y'all support me. Y'all on here late at night and y'all watching this. So shout out to all you who was in the chat room. I appreciate it. Talk Truth with Shawnee. Go check out her YouTube channel. She has some good videos on there as well, which is very interesting. So I just have a good build with the sister. So check out her YouTube channel as well. If anybody else has a YouTube channel that has some information in it, post it in the chat so people can go back and check on it, or post it in the chat and I'll shout you out when I do the session, so I can definitely give you guys some clout as well, because it's not about me, you know, it's about what I can do to pave the way for other people to come behind me and do greater than me. You know, that's my job, is to just to be the pioneer for the rest of everybody else. So with that, I want to say Todah, family, for watching. Shalom and Shabbat Shalom for those who are celebrating the Sabbath starting this evening. And I want you guys to stay tuned, because I'm about to bring up a new Google Hangout session that'll be live. We'll have a discussion and we'll be able to enjoy each other's company. We can build on the information that I brought forth, and we can add anything complementary or supplemental to it and have a build. Again, we're not on this build to argue, to debate, to fight, or anything like that. If anybody comes with that spirit, you're getting booted off of there. All right, we're coming in the spirit of love, humility, peace, and also being strong with our information, but the objective is edification. All right, being able to listen when other people speak, being able to absorb what they're saying, being able to enhance their arguments, and be able to come together as one high collective group of a superpower that we're going to rise up from, or come out of the nation of Israel. Okay, bring that peaceful spirit, family. All right, we don't want no discord on there. All right, so you're gonna get booted out. Have zero tolerance for that. All right, so I love you, family. Thank you for watching. Peace, shalom, and Black power.